What if the objects left behind by ancient hands could still whisper their secrets? Welcome to Unearthed Secrets, the place where forgotten relics and lost histories come alive. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is right now. Please subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. Alright then, let's begin. The figure that walked in fire. Beneath the thick canopy of Ecuador's forests, where the air is heavy with the perfume of wet leaves and soil, there are whispers about objects unearthed from Earth that feels almost alive. Among them is a single terracotta figure, a small, unassuming shaman cast in clay centuries ago. At first glance, it seems fragile, almost ordinary, the kind of artifact that might crumble with a careless touch. Yet the closer one looks, the more it resists simplicity, for this was no mere doll, no idle craft of idle hands. This was the figure that walked in fire. It was found half buried in a mound where local memory said no one should dig. Farmers clearing ground for planting struck it with the edge of a tool, and when it was lifted out, its surface seemed wrong for clay, darker, glossier in places, as though it had passed through flame yet had not cracked. The villagers who saw it passed it around carefully, noticing that even under clouded daylight, its form seemed to shimmer faintly, as if the figure itself carried a heat that was not there. And they remembered stories their grandparents had told, about shamans who could step into fire without being consumed, whose bodies carried the power of flame itself. The figurine was small enough to fit into the palm, but every detail spoke with intention. Its head was tilted back, mouth open in a frozen chant, and its arms were raised as if beckoning the sky, or commanding unseen forces. Around its torso were incised lines, spirals, whorls, marks that some thought resembled tongues of flame. To others they were rivers, veins of energy. On its back, however, was the most unsettling detail, a scarred texture, as if the clay itself had been melted and refrozen mid-motion. When archaeologists first examined it, they thought it belonged to one of the pre-Columbian cultures of coastal Ecuador, perhaps the Valdivia or Chirera people. Both were skilled in pottery, both left behind objects with ritual purposes. Yet this figure seemed older, stranger. Its clay composition did not quite match known samples, and when tested, it bore heat marks of temperatures far exceeding what local kilns could produce in that age. Somehow the figurine had endured fire intense enough to reshape it without shattering. That mystery deepened when oral traditions were consulted. In the highlands and forests, tales survived of shamans who walked barefoot into flames to prove their bond with the spirits. Some said they swallowed burning embers and emerged unscathed. Others described them dancing in the middle of bonfires, singing as if flames were air. These were not mere performers, they were said to be bridges between worlds, figures who entered fire to bargain with ancestors and return with visions. Could this figurine be more than symbolic? Was it created to embody one who had truly walked through fire? Or was it meant to be used in rituals itself, thrown into flames as an offering but somehow enduring, surviving, carrying back the energy it was meant to give away? Those who held the artifact often described a sensation that was difficult to explain. The surface was cool, but in the hand it felt alive, almost pulsing. One researcher swore he felt his palm warm as he gripped it. Another said she dreamed vividly after touching it, dreams filled with rivers of flame and shadowy figures singing in a tongue she did not know. Skeptics dismissed these accounts as imagination, but the stories clung stubbornly, as if the figure's purpose was to make itself remembered. Some scholars pointed to the practice of shamanic transformation in Ecuador's past. Shamans were believed to shift forms, to move between human and spirit, sometimes appearing as animals, sometimes as elemental beings. Fire, in particular, was sacred. It was the breath of the sun, the purifier, the destroyer that also gave life. A shaman who could master fire was not just healer, but living proof of divine favor. To create a figurine of such a shaman was not mere representation, it was invocation. The clay body could act as vessel, a housing for the spirit of fire to dwell within. What makes the story stranger is the context of its discovery. The figurine was unearthed near a site where burned ground extended in unnatural patches, as if an ancient fire had scorched the earth so deeply that it refused to grow certain plants again. Villagers said the soil there still remembered fire, and some refused to walk upon it at night. When tests were run, charcoal fragments were indeed found, but carbon dating placed them in different centuries, as though fire had returned to that spot again and again. Was it a ritual site where flames were called down repeatedly? Was this figurine left there as a witness, or as a survivor? Legends from the nearby communities tell of a night long ago when a shaman stood against a spreading blaze that threatened to consume everything. Instead of fleeing, he walked into the fire, carrying nothing but his chants. The fire was said to bow before him, curving around his body like a cloak. When the flames died, the shaman was gone, but something remained. A figure in clay, hardened and dark, still standing in the ashes. Some say the villagers carried that figure into safety, and it was passed hand to hand for generations until it was buried in the mound where it was found. Such legends blur the line between memory and myth, yet they circle the artifact like moths around a flame. Archaeologists can measure, they can test, they can analyze minerals and temperatures, but what they cannot explain is how the figure refuses to belong entirely to the past. It feels present, it resists being locked away in a display. And perhaps that is why some museums quietly decline to take custody of it. One account describes an attempt to transport the figure overseas. Packed carefully in protective foam, the crate arrived scorched, with burn marks on the interior, though no fire had occurred during transit. The figure itself was intact, untouched. Another time, during a private exhibition, the lights above its case reportedly flickered and went dark whenever someone lingered too close. These could be dismissed as coincidences, but when they happen too many times, patterns begin to form. What if the figurine was more than symbolic memory? What if clay was chosen not because it was convenient, but because it could hold something alive? Terracotta, after all, is porous. It breathes. What if in its pores, in its fired body, something was sealed long ago? A presence, a fragment of ritual, a shard of a shaman's spirit that had truly walked into flame. The questions grow larger than the artifact itself. Did the makers of this figure believe they could trap fire in form? Did they succeed? And if so, is it still burning, hidden in silence, waiting for those who touch it to carry away a spark of its memory? The terracotta shaman is still studied, still debated, but rarely displayed. It is said to rest in controlled storage, sealed but never forgotten. Those who have seen it closely say it cannot be photographed properly. Images blur or the details flatten as if the figure refuses to be captured in full. Some whisper that the only way to understand it is to stand in its presence, to feel the strange heat that seems to pulse through cool clay. In the end, the figure that walked in fire is not just a relic, it is a question. A reminder that the world has always balanced between what can be measured and what can only be felt. In the forests of Ecuador, where fire once burned and voices sang to it, clay was shaped into a form that still resists silence. Whether it is memory, spirit, or something that lingers between the two, no one can say for certain. But one thing is clear, even centuries later, the figure still walks, not in flesh, but in story, in mystery, and in the fire it carries quietly within. The vessel that spoke to the sea. In the shifting light of the Mediterranean, where waves crash against stone and salt clings to everything it touches, there are stories of vessels that were not merely containers but voices, voices meant for the sea itself. Among the ruins and shipwrecks left behind by the Phoenicians, those master sailors of the ancient world, amphorae, emerge again and again. Tall, narrow, graceful jars, designed for wine, oil, grain, but one among them, recovered from the coast near Lebanon, whispers a different story. To those who found it, it was not only a jar but an oracle, an object that seemed alive with the very rhythm of the tide. They called it the vessel that spoke to the sea. The Phoenicians were traders, navigators, and myth-makers. From Tyre, Sidon, and Byblos, their ships spread across the known world, carrying cedar wood, purple dye, and glass. They knew the sea better than anyone, and they feared it more than anyone. To live by the sea was to bargain with it, to respect its power, to recognize that every journey was a risk. For this they crafted rituals, offerings, charms, and sometimes they shaped amphorae that carried not only goods but prayers. The amphora in question was first raised from the depths by fishermen, whose nets tangled in something heavy near the ruins of a sunken quay. When they hauled it up, they saw at once it was no ordinary jar. Its surface was inscribed with patterns unlike the usual trade markings. Spirals spread across its neck, flowing downward like waves frozen in clay. Along its body, faint etchings of fish and ships circled endlessly, worn but still visible, as though the amphora itself told a story of journeys never ending. What unsettled the men most was the sound it made. Even empty, when lifted, it seemed to echo faintly, as if water swirled inside. One of them swore it hummed, low and steady, like the breathing of the sea. When archaeologists studied it, they noted the craftsmanship was extraordinary. The clay, hardened beyond usual firing, had absorbed salts from centuries underwater but remained intact, uncracked, almost defiant. Most amphorae found in shipwrecks break easily, their thin necks and handles fragile, but this one, against all odds, was whole, and the patterns upon it did not match the utilitarian markings of trade amphorae. They seemed ritualistic, designed not for commerce but for communication. Scholars traced it to around the 8th century BCE, when Phoenician sailors ventured as far as Spain and beyond. This was a time when the sea was both highway and abyss, when storms could swallow entire fleets without warning. To survive such journeys, sailors called upon gods of the deep, Yam, lord of the sea, Baal, master of storms, and lesser spirits believed to dwell in every wave. Amphorae like this one may have been created as offerings, filled with sacred oil or wine, cast into the water to appease the ocean. But this vessel, curiously, had not been broken or discarded. It had been carefully sealed, sunk deliberately, as though placed there for the sea itself to keep. Inside, fragments of residue were found, traces of oil mixed with resins, herbs, even a powder of unknown origin. When tested, some of these ingredients matched known offerings burned in temple rituals. But others did not belong at all. They were marine in nature, drawn from sea plants rarely harvested, some deep-water species. Whoever sealed this vessel had mixed land and sea together, creating not just an offering, but a union, as if to make the amphora a voice the ocean would recognize. What haunts the imagination is the possibility that the vessel was not merely meant to appease, but to communicate. The Phoenicians were masters of sound, of chanting, of echoing prayers across the water. Could this amphora, when lowered into the sea, have been intended to carry a sound back? Its narrow body and curved handles acted almost like the body of an instrument. Some acoustic studies suggest that when air was blown across its sealed neck, it could resonate, producing a hum, a voice for the sailors perhaps, or an echo of the waves themselves. Local fishermen who heard about its recovery began to repeat old tales. They spoke of jars that answered back. In certain villages, stories linger of sailors casting amphorae into the sea, and hearing voices return, not in words, but in sounds, the deep rumble of the ocean shaped into human tones. These tales were often dismissed as imagination, born of fear and loneliness at sea. Yet here, with this vessel, the myth felt tangible. When one archaeologist held it close to his ear, he claimed he heard the faintest murmur, like wind in a cave, like distant singing. His colleagues insisted it was air trapped within the clay pores, but he never forgot the sound. The amphora now rests in a secure collection, away from casual view, but those who have handled it privately describe a sensation similar to seasickness when standing too near. One researcher confessed she felt her balance shift, as though standing on the deck of a ship in stormy waters, despite being in a steady room. Another said that in dreams following his examination, he heard endless waves and saw lights on the horizon that drew closer but never arrived. None of these accounts make sense scientifically, yet they persist, as stubborn as the amphora itself. In the lore of Phoenician sailors, there is a phrase that translates loosely as, "The sea remembers every gift." To offer the sea a vessel was not only to give but to speak, to tell the waters who you were, where you were going, and why you needed safe passage. Could this amphora have been such a message? If so, what did it say, and why does it still seem to echo, long after the hands that sealed it have turned to dust? Perhaps the most unsettling thought is this. What if the sea answered? What if the amphora does not only hum because of trapped air, but because it carries an echo not of its own making? A sound pressed into it by the water that cradled it for centuries, waiting for ears brave enough to listen. The vessel that spoke to the sea might still be speaking, not in words we understand, but in the ancient language of waves, currents, and depths. It sits silent in the human world, yet alive in ways we cannot measure. Clay, etched with waves, heavy with secrets, a voice waiting in its hollow body. When you stand near it, you may not hear it at first, but if you listen long enough, truly listen, you might catch it. The murmur of the ocean in a jar, the voice of the sea, carried across centuries, still speaking in echoes we have yet to translate. And so the amphora remains, not broken, not discarded, but whole. A question shaped in clay, a vessel that refuses silence. The Phoenicians may be gone, their ships long vanished beneath waves, but through this amphora, they are still speaking. And somewhere, in its hollow, the sea still listens. The crown that burned in ashes. They say that crowns are forged to last forever, symbols of power meant to outlive kings, kingdoms, and even memory. Yet in the green heart of Ireland, where limestone rises into a natural fortress known as the Rock of Cashel, there lingers a story of a crown that did not endure, a crown that did not fall into the silence of centuries, but into fire, into smoke, into the strange permanence of ash. They call it the Crown of Cashel, though no jewel remains to prove its name, no gold to display in a museum case. Only whispers, only scorched stones, only the uneasy notion that something meant to rule did not survive, and yet still lingers like heat long after the flames are gone. It is said to be the crown that burned in ashes. Cashel itself was never an ordinary place. Rising steep from the plains of Tipperary, the Rock of Cashel looms like something drawn out of myth. Legends claim St. Patrick himself stood here when he drove the snakes from Ireland, that kings of Munster were crowned here, and that ancient druids once walked its ridges. The fortress that stands now, ruined walls, Cormac's Chapel, a cathedral hollowed by time, was layered over centuries, stone upon stone, faith upon faith, until even the ground seems to hum with centuries of footsteps. And within this fortress, once, a crown was kept, not just any crown, but the symbol of Munster's sovereignty, a relic that bound kings to their people and their gods. No record describes its exact form. Some say it was bronze, burnished with silver. Others whisper it was a circlet of gold, studded with red stones that gleamed like embers. A few accounts, half-remembered, speak of a crown woven with iron thorns, meant to remind rulers that power comes with pain. Whatever its true form, the crown of Cashel was not merely ornament. It was ritual, binding, a talisman of kingship as much as an object of rule. It was brought out in ceremonies, raised to the skies, kissed by bishops, touched by warriors, and then it was gone. The story of its disappearance is not a single tale but a braid of many. Some blame Cromwell's forces, who swept across Ireland in the 17th century, leaving fire in their wake. It is said that soldiers stormed the rock, seized its treasures, and piled them high in the cathedral nave. They lit the pile and watched relics burn, laughing as gold melted and parchment curled into black smoke. In that fire, the crown is said to have melted, but gold does not burn, not easily, and yet no crown was recovered from the ashes. Others insist it was earlier, during Viking raids, that the crown was lost, hurled into fire or into the river sewer to keep it from invaders. Still others murmur that it was never lost at all, but sacrificed, burned deliberately, as an offering when Cashel itself fell to ruin, a final gift to gods older than the cathedral walls. What makes the tale stranger is what came after. People began to see things among the ruins, a faint glow in the shadows, like fire refusing to die. Monks spoke of hearing the crackle of flames where no torch burned. Travelers reported dreams of crowns rising from ash, heavy yet insubstantial, circling their heads with heat. And in the chronicles of Cashel, scribes sometimes left lines unfinished, as if interrupted, as if the memory of fire pulled their quills from the page. Archaeologists who have combed the rock of Cashel find only fragments, melted metal droplets fused into stone, blackened earth under cathedral floors, scorch marks where none should be. Yet nothing resembling a crown has ever been unearthed, and still the legend persists. They say the crown burned but did not vanish, that it still hovers in ash and memory, unable to be destroyed because it was not simply metal. It was power given shape, and power cannot be erased, only transformed. What does it mean, a crown that burns but endures? Perhaps it means that kingship itself is an ember, carried forward through fire. Perhaps it means that even destruction cannot silence symbols. Or perhaps it means something stranger, that the crown took fire into itself, that whoever wears it now wears not gold but flame. Old folk stories tell of a shadow seen on Cashel's heights, a figure crowned in flickering light, walking where no king now walks. Shepherds crossing the plain at dusk say they glimpse it for a moment, a glow against the ruined towers, then nothing, only smoke, only the sigh of wind through stone. Some believe the crown's ashes were gathered by unseen hands. They tell of secret orders who preserved fragments, carrying them into hiding. One tale insists the ashes were mixed into ink, used to write a single book of prophecy now lost. Another claims they were scattered across fields so that Munster's kingship would pass into the very soil, feeding the land rather than any one man. Farmers in Tipperary sometimes whisper that their earth grows greener, richer, because of the crown burned there. Whether such tales hold truth or not, the land itself seems to remember. In the modern era, researchers who study Cashel sometimes speak of unease. One described kneeling near the cathedral ruins and feeling sudden heat on her palms, though no fire was near. Another heard what he swore was the hiss of something extinguished when he touched a scorched stone. Instruments brought to measure electromagnetic activity spike without cause, then fall silent, and tourists, though they rarely know the legend in full, often remark on an odd smell, a faint trace of burning, lingering even in rain. The Rock of Cashel is not alone in such legends. Across the world, crowns vanish, treasures fall, fire consumes. But here, the difference is this. The crown is remembered not as something lost, but as something transformed. The crown of Cashel was not stolen, not hidden, not buried. It burned, and in burning, it became something no one can claim, no one can wield, no one can truly destroy. It is both gone and present, absence and presence, ash and flame. Imagine standing upon Cashel at night. The wind rushes cold across the plain, carrying scents of earth and stone. The cathedral rises dark against the stars, its arches hollow. You walk where kings once walked, where choirs once sang, where soldiers once stormed, and in the silence you hear it. A crackle, faint but insistent, like twigs catching flame. You turn, but no fire burns. Only the crown, unseen, circling above you in heat and memory. You feel its weight for an instant, then it is gone. What is left is the question. A crown that burned in ashes, remembered not for its gold but for its fire. Was it destroyed? Or did it cross into another form, becoming more story than substance, more haunting than object? The rock of Cashel keeps its secrets, its stones whisper, its shadows glow, and somewhere, in the silence, a crown still smolders, refusing to vanish, refusing to be silenced, reminding all who walk there that power, once kindled, never fully dies. And so the crown of Cashel endures, not in glass cases, not on velvet cushions, but in air, in ash, in the minds of those who believe. It endures in stories told by firelight, in dreams that smell faintly of smoke, in the heat that lingers upon stone long after the sun has set. It is not a crown of gold, not anymore. It is a crown of flame, a crown of memory, a crown of ashes, and it waits, still burning, on the rock that has seen kings rise and kingdoms fall, waiting for ears that will listen, for eyes that will glimpse the fire that cannot die. The drum that carried a storm. In the heart of West Africa, where the heat of the sun beats down on red earth and the horizon shimmers with waves of mirage, there exists a drum unlike any other. It is called the talking drum, a creation that can speak, that can carry a storm in its skin, that can travel across the air and time with messages and magic alike. But this is no ordinary instrument, no mere object of music. It is alive with history, with the voices of kings and hunters, of messengers and spirits. It is said that the drum does not merely make sound, it commands the wind, carries storms across savannas, and speaks the language of the clouds. The story begins not in a city, but in a village encircled by forests so dense that the sun barely kisses the earth, and rivers that meander like silver snakes. Here every family had a drum, and every drum had its own spirit, but among them all, one drum stood apart. It was said that it had been carved from the heart of a sacred iroko tree, a tree older than any living human memory. The craftsman who made it, an old man named Oba, whose hands were said to have been guided by the ancestors, worked in silence for nights lit by fireflies and the occasional torch. He carved not only wood, but intention, molding the drum to carry not just sound, but the very essence of the land itself. This drum was shaped with the traditional hourglass form, tight in the middle, broad at each end, allowing the player to squeeze and release its tension, changing its pitch as easily as one changes one's breath. But what made it extraordinary was the story embedded in the wood. Oba had spent months whispering messages into the drum, invoking spirits of the wind, the thunder, and the rains. He had drummed at midnight, at dawn, at the hour when the sky swallows the sun, asking the drum to listen, to remember, to carry whatever was spoken to it beyond sight and hearing. When it was finished, the drum was polished with palm oil and left under the full moon to absorb the silver light, as if the moon itself could lend its voice to the instrument. Once complete, the drum was presented to the village king, who knew at once that it was unlike any other drum he had heard. He placed it in the royal courtyard during ceremonies, and the effect was immediate. When the drum was struck, it did not merely produce a rhythm, it resonated with a force that seemed to ripple through the earth itself. The villagers reported that animals paused, birds fell silent mid-flight, and the wind shifted its course as if listening. Those with sensitive ears claimed they could hear messages in the drum beats, warnings of danger, blessings for harvests, and the low murmurings of ancestors long gone. The talking drum's reputation spread quickly, and soon emissaries from neighboring kingdoms arrived, desperate to see it and hear it for themselves. It was said that when played in sequence, the drum could convey complex information. Messages that would take hours to speak aloud could be transmitted in minutes, with varying tones and rhythms forming a language understood only by those trained in its art. Some say that even kings across rivers received news of impending invasions or celebrations just by listening to the echo of the talking drum carried on the wind. Its voice, like lightning, could traverse distance and terrain, bending reality so that messages reached places humans could not. But the drum was not content with mere communication. One of its most mysterious powers was said to be its ability to summon storms. During the dry season, when crops withered and the earth cracked under relentless heat, the drum was brought out in ceremonial dances. Skilled drummers would pound upon its skin, their hands moving like weaving snakes, sweat dripping into the grooves of the wood. The rhythm started slow, hesitant, then accelerated, pulsing with urgency, and then, as if awakened by a forgotten covenant, the sky would respond. Clouds would gather, dark and low, and the first distant roll of thunder could be felt through the village floor. Wind would stir the trees, and by the time the final beats were struck, rain would pour, quenching the earth, feeding the rivers, and bringing relief to parched villages. One such occasion is remembered in stories passed from elders to children. It was during a drought that had lasted the better part of a year. Crops had failed, rivers had dried to trickles, and spirits of the ancestors were said to have turned their faces away in sorrow. The king called upon the drum, and the most skilled drummer in the kingdom, a man named Adi, took it into the central square. He began cautiously, letting the drum whisper first, small taps that made the air shiver. But as the village watched, something extraordinary happened. A wind rose, carrying the scent of distant rain. The drum's voice grew, rising to a roar, and with each beat, the clouds thickened, swirling over the plains. Thunder answered, and when Adi struck the final rhythm, rain fell in torrents. The villagers wept, not for joy alone but for awe. They had seen music bend nature itself, a drum that had carried a storm. Yet the talking drum was not merely a tool of wonder, it was also a weapon, a device of strategy in times of war. In kingdoms where rivalries flared and borders were fluid, the drum could deliver secret instructions, mobilize warriors, or sow confusion in enemy ranks. One story tells of a small kingdom outnumbered, whose warriors were facing annihilation. They sent messages on foot to allies, but the roads were fraught with danger, so they turned to the talking drum. A master drummer, hidden in the forest, transmitted instructions in rhythm alone. Allies arrived in time, coordinating attacks and ambushes, guided only by the drum's voice. The instrument had not only carried information, it had carried hope, life, and survival across impossible distances. Beyond the practical, the talking drum was believed to hold spiritual power. Shamans and priests would use it to communicate with ancestors, spirits, and deities. They claimed that during trance ceremonies, the drum's voice could open doors between worlds, allowing spirits to walk among the living. Those who participated often described visions, fiery skies, rivers of molten silver, animals speaking, and ancestors draped in ceremonial garb. And when the drumming ceased, participants felt changed, as if the storm within the drum had passed into them, leaving understanding, fear, and reverence intertwined. The drum also carried personal stories. Families believed that certain talking drums had their own temperaments, moods that could change depending on who played them. Some drums would respond only to their maker, while others could not be silenced, speaking whenever touched, even by strangers. In some villages, parents taught children to listen to the drum before teaching them to speak. The rhythm was a language, older than words, resonating deep in the body, carrying emotions, warnings, and celebrations across generations. Modern scholars have tried to quantify the drum's powers, studying its acoustics, its resonance, its ability to transmit sound across vast distances. They record frequencies, measure vibrations in soil and stone, and map the ways its tones carry over land. But no measurement fully captures what the villagers already knew, that the drum does more than transmit sound. It transmits connection between people, between time and place, between life and spirit. It is a reminder that in some places, music and magic are inseparable, that history can be felt in rhythm as much as it can be read in text. Legends say that even today, talking drums are made with the same care, with the same invocation of spirits, with the same understanding that rhythm can carry power. A drum may rest in a village square, in a royal palace, or in a private home, but its heartbeat is not contained. It waits for hands to call it into life, and when they do, it can speak words that cannot be written, summon rains that cannot be predicted, and recall the memory of every storm it has ever carried. And so, the drum endures, across centuries, across droughts, wars, and change. It carries storms and messages, it teaches and it warns, it speaks when words fail. The talking drum of West Africa is not merely a relic of the past, it is living history, a voice that refuses to be silenced, a storm contained in skin and wood. And when the wind carries the sound across plains and rivers, when villagers feel the first vibrations underfoot, they know that the drum is speaking, that it has traveled through time and space, that it has carried yet another storm. To hear it is to hear the land itself, to feel the pulse of ancestors and nature intertwined. And to play it is to take part in a conversation that began long before any of us were born, a conversation of power, spirit, and storm. The talking drum is a bridge between worlds, a bearer of stories, and a keeper of secrets. For those who seek it, the drum is still here, hidden in villages, remembered in songs, felt in the wind. You may not see it, but you can hear it, if you listen carefully. A rumble over distant hills, a vibration underfoot, a pattern that seems more than rhythm alone. This is the drum speaking, carrying another storm, waiting for hands to awaken it, waiting for hearts to understand that even in silence, it never stops speaking. The staff that drew a line in sand. In the heart of Ireland, nestled along the banks of the River Shannon, lies the ancient monastic settlement of Clonmacnoise. For centuries, it has been a place of prayer, learning, and reflection. Among the many treasures that once graced its sacred grounds, one artifact stands out, not for its size, nor for its gold or jewels, but for its quiet, almost magical significance, the bishop's crosider, known to history as the staff that drew a line in sand. This was no ordinary staff. Crafted from polished yew wood and tipped with intricate bronze, the crosider bore the emblematic curve of ecclesiastical authority, yet it held a secret that few who gazed upon it could ever fully grasp. Legends whisper that the staff, when placed upon the sands of Clonmacnoise's riverbanks or the monastery's clay courtyards, could mark invisible boundaries, delineating spaces of spiritual power and divine protection. The line it drew was more than a simple boundary. It was a separation between the worldly and the sacred, a line that no malevolent spirit could cross. Its origins trace back to the early medieval period, a time when Ireland was a tapestry of small kingdoms, each with its own chieftains, druids, and spiritual practices. Clonmacnoise itself had been founded by Saint Ciarán in the mid-6th century and quickly became a center for scholarship and devotion. Monks there labored to copy sacred texts, illuminate manuscripts with painstaking care, and record the history of their people. In such a world, a staff of divine authority was not merely a ceremonial object, it was a symbol of the balance between earthly rulers and the unseen forces that guided them. The bishop who carried this crosier was entrusted with more than the governance of a religious community. He was seen as a mediator between the human and the divine, a protector of souls, and a custodian of sacred knowledge. When the staff touched the ground, it was said that the very earth responded. Grains of sand seemed to shimmer with faint light, and tiny ripples in the river reflected patterns not found in the sky. Local lore claims that this was no trick of reflection or shadow, but a sign of the crosier's divine blessing, a proof that the bishop's authority extended beyond mere mortal sight. The staff itself was carved with delicate knots and interlacing patterns, a hallmark of Hiberno-Saxon art. Tiny images of saints, angels, and beasts were hidden in its spirals, visible only to those who approached with reverent attention. Some believed that these carvings were more than decoration. They were incantations in wood and bronze, coded prayers that could summon protection or guide the faithful. Touching the staff was said to grant clarity of mind, a temporary glimpse into the wisdom of centuries past, connecting the holder with the spiritual lineage of Clonmacnoise itself. During times of conflict, the staff's legend grew. Vikings raided the monasteries of Ireland, seeking wealth and plunder, but the monks of Clonmacnoise protected the crosier with unwavering devotion. It was said that invaders would approach the sacred ground only to find themselves disoriented, paths twisting unnaturally, or fog descending where none had been. Some whispered that the staff, when placed upon the sand, drew invisible barriers that even steel could not penetrate. The Viking chroniclers themselves, though unfamiliar with the deeper spiritual significance, recorded tales of lines that move like spirits and a staff that commands the earth itself. Beyond its defensive capabilities, the staff also played a ceremonial role in the life of the monastery. It was used in blessings, processions, and rites of passage. When a new abbot was installed, the crosier would trace a circle in the courtyard, marking the sacred space and ensuring that all within its boundary were under divine protection. Its presence imbued every ritual with a sense of gravity and awe. Witnesses wrote that even the air seemed to hum when the staff moved, as if the universe itself acknowledged the act. Over centuries, the bishop's crosier passed from hand to hand, surviving political upheavals, Viking incursions, and the quiet erosion of time. Yet, despite its fragile materials, wood susceptible to rot, bronze prone to tarnish, the staff endured. This was not merely due to human care. Stories tell of storms that swept across the monastery, yet left the staff untouched, of fires that consumed surrounding buildings while the crosier remained whole. It was as if the staff itself bore a protective spirit, one bound to the sanctity of Clonmacnoise. Modern archaeologists who study the staff note the incredible craftsmanship and symbolic complexity of the artifact. Microscopic examination reveals minute inscriptions and symbols, some of which remain undeciphered, suggesting a language of devotion that transcends our current understanding. Chemical analysis of the bronze indicates techniques that were advanced for the time, and the wood, treated with oils and resins, speaks to a deep understanding of preservation and sacred care. Yet, even with all modern tools, the crosier retains an aura that cannot be quantified, a quiet power, a presence felt by those who stand near it. Visitors to Clonmacnoise today may not always see the original staff, as it is often held under protective care due to its historical value. But the stories endure, passed from guide to visitor, from historian to student, each recounting how the bishop's crosier once drew a line in sand, marking a threshold between the mundane and the holy. Some say that if you stand at the site at dawn, when the first light hits the river and the sands shimmer, you can still sense the path of that invisible line, a reminder that power, wisdom, and devotion can be carried in even the simplest of objects. The crosier's legacy is not merely in its physical form but in its enduring symbolism. It speaks to the human desire to connect with forces larger than ourselves, to mark our presence on the earth in ways that honor the sacred. It represents vigilance, guidance, and the quiet authority that comes not from force but from understanding and reverence. Each carving, each curve, and each carefully drawn line in the sand tells a story of faith, resilience, and the unbroken continuity of spiritual tradition. To walk the grounds of Clonmacnoise is to walk in the shadow of this legacy. One can almost hear the echoes of ancient chants and the gentle scraping of the staff against sand as it traced invisible paths. The Lamassu guards distant gates in Mesopotamia, the terracotta army watches silently in China, and here, in Ireland, the bishop's crosier drew its quiet, steadfast line, a sentinel in its own right, bridging the worlds of the seen and unseen. Even today, the story of the staff that drew a line in sand inspires awe. Artists replicate its form in sculptures, scholars debate the meanings hidden in its carvings, and storytellers recount its powers to new generations. Its line, though invisible, remains unbroken, a testament to faith, devotion, and the enduring power of a simple staff that could shape both space and spirit. And so, the bishop's crosier of Clonmacnoise endures in memory, a silent witness to the lives it touched, the ceremonies it graced, and the storms it weathered. It reminds us that sometimes the greatest power is not in the force we see, but in the subtle, quiet lines we draw, lines that protect, guide, and connect us to something far greater than ourselves. The horn that waited for battle. In the rolling hills of medieval France, where dense forests meet gentle rivers, there lies a history often whispered about, but rarely touched. The story of the Oliphant of Charlemagne, known to history as the horn that waited for battle. Crafted from the ivory tusk of a magnificent elephant, this horn was more than an object of beauty. It was a symbol, a talisman, and a warning. The Oliphant did not merely signal the approach of war. It carried with it the weight of kings, armies, and a legacy that reverberated through centuries. The Oliphant's ivory gleamed with a muted luster, its surface intricately carved with scenes of triumph and piety, angels and warriors intertwined in delicate reliefs recounting the victories of past rulers and the blessings of the divine. Along its length, inscriptions in Latin traced prayers for protection, for courage in the face of overwhelming odds, and for the guidance of God in the turbulent storms of war. These carvings were not simply decorative, they were a bridge between the mortal and the sacred, a reminder that the horn's sound was more than music, it was a call for destiny itself to intervene. Charlemagne, the great king of the Franks and emperor of the Romans, valued the Oliphant not just for its beauty, but for its power. In an age where symbols were as potent as swords, the horn was a message to allies and enemies alike. The emperor's reach was vast, and his resolve unshakable. When lifted to the lips and blown with all the might of trained lungs, the Oliphant's deep, resonant tone could carry for miles, echoing across valleys and forests, announcing that the army of the empire was on the move. The crafting of the horn itself was a feat of patience and devotion. Ivory, rare and precious, was sourced from faraway lands, brought to the heart of the empire through treacherous trade routes. Master artisans, working under the strict eye of royal oversight, carved the tusk for years, turning a natural object into a masterpiece that held both aesthetic and spiritual significance. Every detail, the precise curvature of the horn, the delicacy of the engravings, the smooth polish of its surface, was calculated to inspire awe and fear, to mark the presence of power, even before a single soldier stepped onto the battlefield. Legends say that the Oliphant was not always a peaceful instrument. When Charlemagne faced rebellion, when the distant Saxons or the unruly Lombards threatened the stability of his realm, the horn would sound, and armies would rally, as if the earth itself answered the call. Soldiers claimed that its echo carried courage directly into the hearts of men, that even those far from the battlefield felt compelled to rise and fight. The horn became a beacon of unity, a signal that destiny was unfolding, and that the emperor's will was absolute. Yet the Oliphant held more than the power to rally men. It carried stories of caution and consequence. It is said that those who blew it without purpose, who sought to wield it as a mere instrument of terror, found their intentions turned against them. Rival lords attempting to use the horn for personal gain reported strange occurrences, animals fleeing in panic, sudden storms erupting from clear skies, or the sound itself returning to haunt the one who dared misuse it. The horn's voice, it seemed, recognized true authority, and only the rightful hand of a ruler of virtue could command it without peril. Throughout its life, the Oliphant bore witness to history's turning points. From the marshlands of northern France to the fortified castles of Aquitaine, it accompanied armies, not as a soldier, but as a silent sentinel, a herald of inevitability. Monks and scribes documented its presence in illuminated manuscripts, often illustrating scenes where the horn sounded across golden fields, shaking dust from the soil and stirring the hearts of men. It became a part of the cultural fabric, a reminder that symbols could carry as much weight as blades, that the sound of a horn could bend the tide of events even before armies clashed. Over time, the Oliphant's fame grew beyond the empire. Foreign emissaries, traveling merchants, and chroniclers from distant lands spoke of the horn that waited for battle, marveling at its intricate carvings and the almost supernatural clarity of its tone. Some believed the horn held divine energy, that Charlemagne himself had been chosen to wield it, and that its sound could summon not only courage, but the protection of saints. In certain quiet corners of France, old families still told stories of hearing the horn's echo on misty mornings, as if the spirit of Charlemagne and his army lingered, waiting for a battle that had long passed. The horn itself eventually passed into history, preserved in monasteries, then later in royal treasuries. Scholars studied its craftsmanship, noting the precision of the engravings, the careful shaping of the ivory, and the harmonious design that allowed it to project sound so far and true. Yet despite all research and analysis, no modern science could replicate the resonance that men of the Middle Ages described. The Oliphant seemed attuned not just to physics but to the human heart, to the courage and fear, the anticipation and resolve of those who heard it. Today, standing before the Oliphant in a museum, one might imagine the forests of France, the clash of armies, and the tension of waiting for the call to rise. One can almost feel the weight of history pressing gently, reminding us that objects are more than their materials, that ivory and bronze, wood and metal, can carry stories that outlast kings and empires. The Oliphant remains a testament to human creativity, ambition, and the desire to connect with forces beyond our understanding. Its horn, silent now, once spoke to the hearts of men with a voice that demanded attention, that commanded action, that carried the weight of destiny itself. The Oliphant of Charlemagne teaches us that power is not only held in the sword or in numbers, but in symbols that inspire, unite, and protect. That sometimes a single instrument, crafted with intention and reverence, can alter the course of history, that waiting, patiently and purposefully, can become a form of strength, and that the stories we leave behind, etched in ivory or sung in whispers, can echo far longer than the battles they once heralded. And so, the horn that waited for battle remains, a silent sentinel of a time when empires were forged, when leaders sought divine guidance, and when the sound of a horn could summon courage, command loyalty, and shape history itself. It is a reminder that history's greatest instruments are not always swords, they can be horns, quietly waiting, patient and eternal, until the moment the world calls upon them once more. The ring that measured time, known to scholars as the astronomical ring of Babylon, lies somewhere deep within the sands of what was once the heart of Mesopotamia, where the Euphrates and Tigris rivers braided through the Fertile Crescent and the hum of ancient civilization still whispers faintly to those who listen carefully. To the casual observer, it might appear as nothing more than a simple bronze or gold band, etched with patterns too intricate for any ordinary hand to have crafted. But to those who understand its legacy, its presence is both profound and unsettling, for this is a ring that does more than sit quietly upon a finger. It holds the weight of the heavens themselves, an artifact through which kings, priests, and astronomers of Babylon glimpsed the cosmic rhythms that governed both human fate and celestial order. Crafted in an age when humanity first began to chart the stars with careful precision, the ring is said to have been designed not merely as a decorative piece, but as a living instrument of astronomical measurement. Tiny, almost imperceptible etchings spiral along its inner and outer surfaces, symbols that correspond to lunar phases, solstices, and planetary alignments. The very act of turning the ring on one's finger, or aligning its engravings with a shaft of sunlight or shadow cast in the temple of Esagula, could provide insight into the passage of time, the ebb and flow of months and years, and the predictions of celestial events that would shape harvests, wars, and the fortunes of entire empires. Local legends speak of the ring's first possessor, a priest astronomer, whose eyes were said to mirror the night sky itself. They whisper that he could foretell the appearance of eclipses, the rare conjunctions of planets, and even the moods of kings based on the stars' alignments. Some say he would hold the ring up during the quiet hours before dawn, the faint glow of the rising sun reflecting off its polished surface, and the engravings would shimmer with patterns that were invisible to the untrained eye. In this way, the ring was not merely a tool, but a conduit, a bridge between the terrestrial and the divine, an oracle of time hidden in the smallest of objects. What is most fascinating is the ambiguity of its instructions. Modern scholars have tried to decode its markings, yet the ring's complexity has confounded even the most meticulous researchers. Some argue it functioned as a type of portable astrolabe, a circular instrument to chart stars and planets, while others suggest it was purely symbolic, a ritual device meant to imbue the wearer with divine authority. There are whispers that it was used to settle disputes of succession, to guide military campaigns, and even to align sacred architecture with the heavens, ensuring that ziggurats, temples, and city gates echoed the cosmic order above. Each small etching seems to resist absolute interpretation, each symbol concealing multiple layers of meaning, a cipher crafted not for casual understanding but for those who sought the truth of the heavens. The history of the ring after its creation is as mysterious as its purpose. Some accounts suggest it was passed from priest to king, each custodian sworn to secrecy, its power feared as much as revered. During times of invasion it is said to have vanished, spirited away before marauding armies could claim it, leaving behind only the faintest traces in temple records and clay tablets. Others whisper of its burial, hidden beneath the foundations of temples in Babylon, where it would lie dormant, waiting for a future era capable of understanding its true potential. Archaeologists have occasionally uncovered fragments of similar devices, small rings and engraved bands, but none match the perfection or the complexity of the one referred to as the ring that measured time. Its disappearance has only elevated its legend, creating a narrative where the line between historical fact and myth becomes blurred, as if the ring itself defies the boundaries of time. The allure of the ring is not confined to the realm of scholars and historians. To imagine holding it is to imagine holding a fragment of eternity. One can picture the weight of it in the hand, the cool metal slipping over the skin, the mind's eye tracing the labyrinthine patterns of celestial calculations etched into its surface. As sunlight moves across its curves, the shadows cast by its engravings create patterns that seem to shift and transform, almost as if the ring itself is alive, as if it participates in the cosmic dance rather than merely representing it. Its power is subtle, not explosive, but deeply affecting, a quiet knowledge that the universe is vast, ancient, and ordered, yet also mysterious and unknowable. Many stories speak of the ring's influence beyond mere astronomy. Some suggest that the king who wore it gained foresight in governance, a clarity in making decisions that appeared uncanny to his subjects. Battles might be waged with the assurance that celestial patterns had foretold victory. Harvests were scheduled according to lunar cycles, yielding abundant grain where previously famine would have struck. Some accounts are more mystical, claiming that those who gazed upon the ring with full understanding experienced visions, dreams that carried the echoes of stars and planets across time, offering glimpses of distant lands, distant futures, and the ephemeral nature of human life, juxtaposed against the infinite cosmos. Its allure is amplified by the environment of its origin, Babylon, with its vast ziggurats reaching toward the sky, its canals reflecting the stars at night, and its temples resonating with chants and prayers, provides the perfect stage for an artifact that bridges heaven and earth. One can imagine the ring being used at dawn, as priests traced the shadow of a gnomon across sacred grounds, or at dusk, as the sky blazed with the colors of sunset, and the first stars began to pierce the velvet night. Each turn of the ring, each adjustment of its delicate engravings, is a conversation with the universe, a whisper to the cosmos that asks not merely what will happen, but why it happens, and how humans fit into the grand design. Yet even with all its power, the ring is a cautionary tale. Legends warn that the ring does not reveal all truths, that misinterpretation of its symbols can lead to disaster, both for individuals and for empires. A king misreading the alignments could wage war at an inopportune moment, inviting ruin. A priest who failed to understand its subtleties could misguide the faithful, bringing famine, discord, or divine displeasure. In this sense, the ring serves as a reminder of the delicate balance between knowledge and wisdom, between the desire to control destiny and the humility required to understand one's place in the cosmos. Through centuries, through empires rising and falling, through invasions, floods, and conquests, the legend of the ring that measured time endures. It is mentioned in clay tablets, hinted at in temple carvings, and whispered in the oral histories of scholars and priests. Modern explorers and archaeologists hunt for it with a mixture of skepticism and awe. Yet the ring continues to elude discovery, as though the universe itself shields it, deeming it unready for modern hands, waiting for a time when its purpose might be fully comprehended once more. Even today, the very thought of the ring is enough to stir the imagination. Historians ponder its symbols, mathematicians speculate on its precision, and astronomers dream of the possibilities it once offered. Its story invites us to wonder about the relationship between humanity and the stars, about the ingenuity of those who first sought to understand the cosmos with nothing more than their minds, their hands, and a few carefully inscribed pieces of metal. To hold, or even glimpse, such a ring is to touch the past, to feel the weight of centuries of knowledge, ambition, and reverence. It reminds us that time is not merely measured by clocks or calendars, but by the silent, intricate patterns that govern our world and the universe beyond. And so the ring that measured time remains, whether hidden beneath layers of sand, locked within a temple vault, or lost to legend entirely, a testament to human curiosity, ingenuity, and reverence for the cosmos. It stands as a bridge between the ancient and the eternal, a reminder that even in a small, seemingly simple object, the vastness of time and space can be contained, understood, and revered. The story of the ring is not just one of astronomy or craftsmanship. It is a story of humanity's ceaseless quest to grasp the rhythms of the universe, to measure, to predict, and to connect with the celestial realm. It is a story that continues to whisper across millennia, waiting for the day when someone will finally understand the full measure of its secrets. The pendant that held storms, known in whispers among scholars and local legends as the Amulet of Tenochtitlan, is a relic whose story intertwines the fierce natural forces of the earth with the ingenuity and devotion of a civilization that once thrived at the center of the world. Nestled on an island within the shimmering waters of Lake Texcoco, Tenochtitlan was a city of canals, temples, and marketplaces so vast and intricate that visitors often claimed it rivaled the heavens themselves. It was in this sprawling metropolis, under the gaze of towering pyramids dedicated to Huitzilopochtli, Tulagek, and Quetzalcoatl, that the pendant was said to have been created. A talisman, imbued with the power of storms, the essence of wind and lightning captured within its intricate form. The pendant itself is small, deceptively delicate, carved from a piece of obsidian so dark that it seems to absorb light, as if containing within it the very night sky. Tiny inlaid fragments of turquoise, jade, and gold trace sinuous patterns across its surface, resembling the curves of lightning as it dances across the sky, the spiraling winds that sweep across mountains and valleys, and the raindrops that fall to nourish the earth below. Scholars who have studied similar artifacts have marveled at the precision of its design. Each line, each curve, and each gem placement appears to follow a pattern that mirrors the chaotic yet ordered nature of storms, suggesting that those who crafted it had not merely skill, but profound knowledge of the forces they sought to represent and harness. Legends say that the amulet was forged for a high priest of Tlaloc, the god of rain, water, and fertility, who sought to ensure bountiful harvests and protect the city from the fury of uncontrolled weather. It was believed that, when worn, the pendant could influence the elements themselves. A storm threatening to flood the island could be diverted, the winds calmed, and the skies made to weep gently, rather than violently. Some stories claim that in times of drought, the high priest would climb the steps of the great temple, the pendant clasped tightly in his hands, and invoke ceremonies that would call forth rain from the parched heavens. The people believed that the storm did not rise by chance, but in response to the prayer and power channeled through the small talisman, a conduit between mortal and divine. The true mystery of the pendant, however, lies not merely in its supposed control over weather, but in its journey through history. During the Spanish conquest, many treasures of the Aztec civilization were looted or destroyed, yet there are accounts suggesting that the pendant survived, hidden away by those who understood its importance. It is said to have been secreted into the depths of the city, buried beneath sacred temples or concealed in the private quarters of noble families who feared its capture. For centuries, its existence became the stuff of legend, whispered from generation to generation, often dismissed by outsiders as the fanciful imaginings of a conquered people longing to preserve the memory of their lost empire. The design of the pendant is as symbolic as it is functional. Around the central piece of obsidian, concentric circles of jade and turquoise mimic the eye of a storm, a calm center amidst the chaos. Radiating outward, delicate gold lines spiral like whirling winds, a silent map of the invisible forces that govern the air. Those who wore it were said to gain insight into patterns of rainfall and storms, an almost predictive understanding of the weather that could guide agricultural planning, military campaigns, and ceremonial rites. The pendant was not merely a tool or a talisman, it was an archive of natural law, a tangible embodiment of the Aztec understanding of the interconnectedness between human life and the elements. The power attributed to the pendant inspired both awe and fear. Some myths suggest that a reckless or unworthy bearer might find themselves caught in storms of unimaginable intensity, as if the amulet punished improper use. Lightning, rain, and wind could turn against them, as if the very elements had become sentient guardians of the pendant's secrets. In contrast, those deemed worthy could wield the amulet to bring prosperity, calm turbulent skies, and even inspire awe in the hearts of allies and enemies alike. There is a story of a young priestess who, during a particularly parched season, ascended the temple steps with the pendant resting against her chest. She raised her arms in silent prayer, and within hours, clouds rolled across the valley, releasing a gentle, life-giving rain. Such accounts, whether fact or folklore, cemented the pendant's reputation as an artifact that transcended ordinary experience. The legacy of the pendant extends beyond its mystical abilities. Its artistry, for instance, demonstrates the height of Aztec craftsmanship. Each gem was meticulously chosen for color and resonance, each line etched to precise measurement, reflecting not just an understanding of beauty, but of symbolism and power. Observers note that even centuries later, the pendant radiates a subtle energy, as if the accumulation of devotion, ceremony, and belief has imbued it with a presence that cannot be quantified. Touching it, one might feel a faint hum, a whisper of the wind, a vibration that recalls distant thunder, a sensation that evokes the storms it was said to command. Archaeologists and historians continue to debate the pendant's ultimate fate. Some claim it was lost entirely, sunk beneath the waters of the lake when the city fell, or hidden by fleeing priests and nobles to preserve its sanctity. Others suggest it was smuggled to private collections in Europe, catalogued and forgotten, its true nature obscured by the passage of time. Whatever its location, the story persists in fragments, descriptions in codices, oral histories passed through generations, and echoes in the ceremonial rituals of descendant communities, who still honor the cycles of rain, storm, and fertility that the pendant once represented. The enduring fascination with the pendant also lies in what it tells us about human desire and ingenuity. It is a testament to the Aztecs' sophisticated understanding of natural forces and their effort to symbolize and perhaps influence them through crafted objects. It is a reminder that humans have long sought ways to understand the world, to bridge the divide between the visible and the invisible, the mortal and the divine. Through a small talisman, they attempted to harmonize with nature, to channel forces beyond comprehension, and to embed the rhythm of storms into something tangible, something that could be held, revered, and passed down through generations. Even now, imagining the pendant inspires wonder. One can picture it resting on the chest of a priest under the burning sun, the wind teasing the edges of ceremonial robes, while dark clouds gather far off, responding to unseen calculations and prayers. One can feel the tension of anticipation, the electric charge in the air before a storm breaks, and the profound silence of the city holding its breath. In these moments, the pendant becomes more than an object. It is a focal point for the human imagination, a bridge between the terrestrial and the celestial, the material and the mystical. And so the pendant that held storms endures in memory, legend, and imagination. Its story is not merely one of craftsmanship or belief, but of the eternal human yearning to understand and engage with the forces that shape our world. Whether it lies hidden in some secret vault, submerged in the depths of Lake Texcoco, or lost entirely to the currents of history, its aura persists. It reminds us that even a small object, carefully crafted and imbued with meaning, can carry the weight of centuries, the pulse of storms, and the whispers of a civilization that once sought to hold the sky in the palm of its hand. The amulet is a testament to the power of human vision, the audacity to believe in the unseen, and the beauty of a world where art, science, and spirituality were intertwined in the delicate dance of creation and reverence. The lantern that outshone darkness. The lantern that outshone darkness, known in historical whispers as the Lantern of Diocletian, is a relic whose presence seems almost impossible to reconcile with the centuries that have passed. It stands as a symbol not merely of illumination but of authority, ingenuity, and the indomitable human desire to command the forces of light against the ever-encroaching shadows. Its origin lies in the heart of the Roman Empire, a period when power, art, and innovation were intertwined in ways that transformed ordinary objects into instruments of legend. Diocletian, the emperor whose name it bears, was a man of vision and discipline, known as much for his reforms and military campaigns as for his attempts to impose order upon a world that often seemed to teeter on chaos. In the midst of this, the lantern emerged, not as a mere tool, but as a testament to the human understanding of fire, light, and the psychological comfort that illumination brings in the darkest of hours. The lantern itself is a masterwork of Roman metalwork and craftsmanship. Forged from bronze and lined with intricate silver inlays, its design demonstrates both elegance and utility. Tiny filigree patterns allow the light to dance across its surface, creating shifting shadows that tell stories of the sun and stars, of victory and mourning, of life in the city and the empire at large. Ancient inscriptions along its base and handle describe blessings of protection, triumph over darkness, and the favor of Jupiter himself, suggesting that the lantern was as much a ceremonial object as it was a practical one. The artisans who crafted it were likely among the most skilled of their age, capable of translating abstract concepts of light, divinity, and cosmic order into a tangible, functional, and enduring artifact. Legends say that the Lantern of Diocletian was first lit in the grand corridors of his palace, perched on the Palatine Hill, or in one of the great halls of his retirement in Split, where he would eventually withdraw from the burdens of the empire. Its flame was no ordinary fire. Some sources claim that it was treated with oils and substances that allowed it to burn brighter, cleaner, and longer than any contemporary lamp. Scholars today speculate that a combination of refined wicks, specialized oils, and a sophisticated chamber design allowed the flame to resist the wind and flicker with a near-constant luminosity. To those who witnessed it in the flickering shadows of grand halls, the lantern was not merely a source of light, but an almost magical object, a piece of the cosmos captured in bronze, capable of banishing the darkness and instilling awe. The symbolic power of the lantern extended far beyond its physical presence. It is said that Diocletian used it during ceremonies to represent his authority over both the material and spiritual realms. Light, after all, is the measure of order against chaos, of knowledge against ignorance, of life against the unknown that lurks in darkness. In times of political upheaval or military threat, the lantern could be placed at the center of court gatherings, casting its glow across the faces of senators, generals, and priests, a quiet but undeniable assertion of control and stability. The emperor understood, perhaps instinctively, that light is not only illumination but psychological dominion. The one who controls the flame controls perception, attention, and even belief. Over the centuries, the lantern's influence grew in legend as much as it did in reality. Stories circulated that it could outshine storms, that its glow would persist even in the absence of air, that no shadow could exist where the lantern was present. Pilgrims, chroniclers, and visiting dignitaries from distant provinces would speak of it in hushed tones, blending fact and myth, as though the lantern were an oracle as much as an artifact. In a time when fire was precious and artificial illumination rare, an object capable of producing unyielding light was interpreted as a conduit between the mortal and divine, a bridge between humanity and the luminescent forces that govern the heavens. The lantern's journey through history is almost as remarkable as its creation. With the fall of the Western Roman Empire, many treasures were destroyed, stolen, or lost, and yet the lantern of Diocletian seems to have survived, hidden and protected, perhaps within secret chambers of monastic holdings or private noble estates. Some accounts suggest it was carried from Rome to distant outposts in the Italian peninsula, while others whisper of it disappearing into the Mediterranean, transported by Venetian merchants or Byzantine envoys who recognized its value. The physical lantern may have been separated from the flame, yet the legend of its radiant power persisted, inspiring successive generations to revere, recreate, and sometimes covet its presence. Examining the lantern today, or imagining it, if it has indeed vanished, reveals both its simplicity and complexity. The body, cylindrical and balanced for portability, allows light to escape in controlled beams, emphasizing the interplay of shadow and brilliance. Tiny etched symbols along the sides suggest cosmic influence, stars, planetary alignments, and abstract representations of solar flares. Bronze and silver interact with the flame to create warmth that is both literal and symbolic, a glow that seems to extend beyond its physical confines. To ancient eyes, the lantern was not simply an object, it was a narrative in metal, a chronicle of empire, a story told in flickering luminescence. The stories attached to the lantern extend beyond its ceremonial and practical applications. During Diocletian's retirement, it is said that the emperor would carry the lantern to walk along his gardens at twilight, observing the shadows stretch and fade as the light balanced perfectly between dusk and night. Advisors claimed that he used its illumination to meditate, to plan, and to contemplate the passage of power and time. Some chroniclers suggest that the lantern was part of divinatory practices, predicting the course of events or serving as a medium through which omens were interpreted. Light, after all, has long been associated with foresight, clarity, and revelation. To possess it, one could claim not only authority but insight. The lantern that outshone darkness also symbolizes resilience. It embodies the persistence of human ingenuity in the face of uncertainty, of the drive to create stability amidst the unpredictable. Darkness is not only physical but metaphorical, representing fear, ignorance, and mortality. To craft a lantern that could, in perception and function, outshine these forces is to assert mastery over existence itself, to proclaim that human intellect and artistry can resist entropy and the inevitable passage of night. Every curve, every filament, every reflective surface is a deliberate testament to this assertion. Its legacy persists, not only in history books but in imagination. To picture the lantern of Diocletian is to see a solitary flame that holds back a vast expanse of darkness, the shadows of forgotten corridors, and the endless night of time itself. One can almost hear the whispers of the empire, the echo of footsteps in empty halls, the distant hum of activity in marketplaces and temples, all illuminated, if only for a moment, by the unwavering glow of a single lantern. Its flame, whether physical or symbolic, acts as a reminder of civilization's ability to create, to preserve, and to inspire awe across centuries. Even as the lantern passes into legend, its presence continues to inspire. Modern scholars attempt to reconstruct its form, experimental historians try to recreate its flame, and artists render its light in paintings and digital media. Each attempt a tribute to an artifact that once held both practical and spiritual dominance. Its story is a meditation on the power of light, how a small object can become a nexus of authority, myth, and human aspiration. It is a narrative that bridges the tangible and the intangible, history and legend, past and present. In the quiet imagination, one can see it now, the lantern that outshone darkness, perched in a grand Roman hall, the shadows receding at its approach, the faces of onlookers illuminated in awe, and the flame casting a narrative of power, wisdom, and continuity. It is more than bronze and silver, it is a witness to empire, a recorder of human ambition, a testament to the enduring desire to conquer both night and ignorance. Each flicker of light carries centuries of human endeavor. Each shadow banished holds a story untold, and the lantern itself becomes a symbol of all that civilization strives to achieve when it seeks to impose order, to illuminate, and to inspire. Even in contemplation, removed from its original space and time, the lantern evokes a sense of connection to those who first carried it, those who first marveled at its glow, and those who understood, instinctively, that light is not merely illumination, but authority, wisdom, and hope. The lantern that outshone darkness, whether it exists today or remains lost to time, continues to shine in memory, in legend, and in the imagination, reminding us that a single object, carefully crafted and revered, can cast a light that endures far beyond the span of its flame. It is a relic that not only illuminates corridors and halls, but also the human heart, the mind, and the eternal pursuit of knowledge, order, and beauty, and so the lantern that outshone darkness persists. A silent, radiant sentinel across the ages, a reminder that even in the deepest shadows, the light of human creativity, devotion, and vision can endure, guiding those who seek wisdom, inspiration, and the courage to face both literal and metaphorical darkness. The staff that called lightning, known to ancient priests and kings as the staff of Amun, is a relic that carries with it the power of the heavens and the authority of the divine. It is a staff not merely of wood or metal, but of purpose, belief, and the centuries of ritual knowledge that Egypt, the land of the Nile, cultivated across millennia. To understand this staff is to glimpse the profound relationship that ancient civilizations had with nature, divinity, and the forces that shaped the world around them. This was not a tool for ordinary use. It was a conduit for power, a symbol of authority, and a vessel through which mortals attempted to harness the elemental forces of the sky. The staff itself is an exquisite work of ancient Egyptian craftsmanship carved from dark, dense wood and inlaid with gold, precious stones, and intricate hieroglyphs that trace the lineage of Amun, the god to whom it was consecrated. Its head, often fashioned in the likeness of a lotus or the solar disk, is not merely decorative but symbolic, representing the connection between the earth and the sun, between the mortal and the divine. The staff was treated with oils, incense, and sacred rituals, enhancing its potency and imbuing it with the essence of the god it served. Priests who wielded it believed that through focus, prayer, and ceremonial precision, they could call upon lightning, the ultimate expression of celestial power, to strike where it was needed, to protect the temple, or to demonstrate the favor of the gods. The history of the staff is inseparable from the history of Amun, the Hidden One, whose presence was both pervasive and secretive. Worshipped first in Thebes, Amun was a god whose essence permeated all things, from the fertile Nile to the burning deserts, from the whispering winds to the thunderclaps that rolled across the horizon. To hold the staff of Amun was to carry a fragment of the god's power, to be an intermediary between the divine and human realms, and to act as a living instrument of cosmic balance. Priests trained for decades to learn the gestures, chants, and meditations required to awaken the staff's power, and each movement was deliberate, precise, and infused with spiritual significance. Legend tells us that during the height of Theban power, pharaohs would call upon the staff in times of crisis. When armies threatened the borders of Egypt, when floods rose beyond expectation, or when omens in the skies suggested disfavor from the gods, the staff was brought forth. In the quiet of the temple, the air thick with incense, a priest would raise the staff, uttering the sacred words, invoking Amun's authority. And then, as if the heavens themselves responded, the clouds would gather, and a bolt of lightning might strike a distant peak or riverbank, a visible testament to divine intervention. Though the exact mechanics of such occurrences may be lost to history, the belief in the staff's power shaped decisions, guided rulers, and cemented the authority of those who wielded it. The staff's power was not merely martial or protective, it was symbolic of knowledge and spiritual enlightenment. In Egyptian cosmology, lightning represented a bridge between the earthly and the celestial, a conduit of divine communication. The staff therefore became more than a ceremonial object. It was a physical manifestation of humanity's attempt to understand, influence, and honor the forces beyond comprehension. In the hieroglyphs that accompany depictions of the staff, one can see patterns representing storms, sun rays, the cyclical nature of time, and the eternal eye of Horus, guarding and observing, ensuring that the power of the staff is wielded responsibly. The staff of Amun traveled through time with secrecy and reverence. As empires rose and fell, its existence became cloaked in legend. Some records suggest it remained within the inner sanctum of the Temple of Karnak, where only the highest-ranking priests could approach it. Others whisper of its journey into private royal collections, hidden away to preserve its potency. Throughout invasions, periods of neglect, and the looting of temples, the staff was said to vanish and reappear, always shrouded in mystique. Its legacy persisted not just because of the physical object, but because of the stories, rituals, and unbroken thread of belief that surrounded it. Examining the staff today, even in imagination, evokes a sense of awe. The wood, aged and darkened by time, would feel cool yet alive to the touch, as though it retained the energy of centuries of ritual. The gold inlays shimmer faintly, reflecting not only ambient light, but the accumulated spiritual resonance of those who had wielded it. Every hieroglyph is precise, every curve intentional, speaking of artisans who understood that a tool of divine power must be both functional and symbolic, an object of beauty, devotion, and authority. In the quiet of the temple, the staff was an anchor for the human psyche, a focus for meditative practices, and a reminder that the world is governed by forces beyond the ordinary. For the priests, holding the staff was to align with a rhythm far larger than themselves, the pulse of the Nile, the drift of the stars, the thunder of storms that sweep across the desert. The act of raising it, chanting ancient words, and visualizing the path of the lightning was a sacred dance of intention and cosmic awareness, a demonstration that human hands, guided by faith and knowledge, could channel even the unpredictable forces of nature. Stories tell of a particular night when a drought threatened the lands of Thebes. The Nile had receded beyond expectation, and the crops were drying under the relentless sun. The high priest, carrying the staff of Amun, ascended to the temple's highest platform. Surrounded by flickering torches, the chanting of acolytes, and the fragrant smoke of sacred herbs, he lifted the staff to the sky. Hours passed. The congregation watched in hushed silence, each heartbeat measured, each breath held. Then, with a sudden roar that shook the temple stones and startled even the most steadfast observers, a bolt of lightning tore across the sky. Rain soon followed. The river swelled, and the drought was alleviated. Whether it was coincidence or the staff's power, the people believed the intervention was divine, and the legend of the lightning staff grew. The staff's significance extends beyond the rituals and legends. It represents the human desire to engage with forces larger than oneself, to seek mastery over chaos while remaining humble before the divine. It embodies the intertwining of art, faith, and natural philosophy. Its creation required mastery of materials, knowledge of cosmic symbolism, and an understanding of human perception. Its use demanded discipline, focus, and reverence. It was not a weapon in the conventional sense, but it wielded authority over the mind, belief, and the perception of power. Even in modern times, scholars and enthusiasts study the staff of Amun, reconstructing it from fragments, drawings, and ancient texts. They attempt to recreate its rituals, understand the ceremonial language, and explore the technological possibilities that the Egyptians might have used to enhance its impact. Every discovery, every hypothesis, adds depth to our understanding of a civilization that sought not only to survive, but to harmonize with the cosmos. The staff is not merely an object of antiquity, it is a window into the Egyptian worldview, a culture that revered the unseen, the elemental, and the spiritual, and that sought to integrate these forces into daily life, governance, and worship. To imagine the staff in action is to feel the tension of anticipation, the thrill of observing power manifest, and the reverence for the forces of nature framed by human ritual. It is to understand that objects in human history are never neutral. They are imbued with purpose, expectation, and meaning. The staff of Amun was a manifestation of that understanding, a singular instrument through which humanity dared to touch the sky and commune with the divine. In reflecting upon the staff that called lightning, one cannot separate the object from the beliefs, the rituals, and the civilization that produced it. Its existence speaks of a world in which the boundary between mortal and divine was not fixed but negotiated, where faith could shape perception, and where objects were elevated to sacred status through intention, design, and devotion. It is a reminder that human ingenuity is often inseparable from imagination, that power is as much symbolic as it is practical, and that even a simple staff, when consecrated and respected, can become a bridge between earth and sky, human and God, shadow and light. The staff of Amun remains, in memory, legend, and scholarship, a testament to the eternal human fascination with the forces that shape our world, a relic that whispers across time of lightning, ritual, and the endless pursuit of understanding, a single object whose impact stretches far beyond its physical form, illuminating history and imagination alike. The helmet that sang battles. The helmet that sang battles, known as the Girmunbu helmet, is a relic that echoes the fierce spirit of the Viking Age, a period when the seas, rivers, and fjords of Scandinavia were alive with the movement of warriors, traders, and explorers. Forged from iron and adorned with precision, the Girmunbu helmet is the only nearly complete Viking helmet discovered in Norway, and it carries with it the weight of countless tales, the whispers of battles fought, and the aura of a people who revered both war and honor. This helmet is not just a piece of protective gear, it is a symbol, a song in metal, and a portal into a time when survival and glory were inseparable, and when every clang of steel on shield and sword resonated with the pulse of human courage. Crafted in the 10th century, the Girmunbu helmet consists of iron plates riveted together with remarkable skill. Its rounded cap is reinforced with a prominent iron band known as the nasal guard, designed to shield the face during combat while allowing visibility and mobility. Unlike modern helmets, it does not rely on padding alone, but integrates both form and function, a combination of metallurgy and ingenuity that allowed a warrior to endure the chaos of a battlefield. The helmet's design reflects the synthesis of artistry and practicality, as every curve, rivet, and edge was a response to both aesthetic principles and the brutal necessities of war. The Gurmunbu helmet was not mass-produced. Each piece was unique, reflecting the wealth, status, and skill of the warrior who bore it. Helmets were treasured possessions, passed down through generations or claimed as spoils, and they carried with them a sense of identity. To don the helmet was to assume not only physical protection, but the mantle of a lineage, a clan, and the spirit of the Viking warrior himself. The metal seemed almost alive, its cool, rigid surface contrasting with the heat of battle, the pounding of drums, and the cries of men and beasts. Archaeological studies reveal that the Gurmunbu helmet, like many Viking artifacts, was part of a larger set of armor, including chainmail and shields, creating a defensive ensemble designed for both offense and protection. The helmet's rounded dome and extended nasal guard allowed the warrior to withstand blows from axes, swords, and spears while maintaining awareness of his surroundings. It was a crucial instrument in the orchestration of Viking combat, an era defined by quick raids, territorial disputes, and the ever-present threat of death. Beyond its physical attributes, the Gurmunbu helmet resonates symbolically with the cultural and spiritual beliefs of the Vikings. Helmets were often viewed as extensions of the warrior's body, connecting them to divine favor, ancestral spirits, and the ethos of Valhalla, the Hall of Slain Warriors. A helmet like this was not merely worn, it was inhabited. Warriors would polish it, adorn it, and treat it with ritual reverence, knowing that its presence could embolden courage, sharpen perception, and even intimidate foes. Each dent and scratch on the helmet carries a story, each rivet a testament to survival, strategy, and the unpredictable dance of life and death. The helmet's discovery in Gurmunbu, Norway, near a burial mound, speaks volumes about the societal significance of the object. It was interred alongside a wealth of weapons and grave goods, suggesting that the warrior it belonged to was not only a skilled combatant, but a person of esteem, possibly a chieftain or a hero within his community. The Viking funerary practices surrounding such helmets indicate that they were not discarded casually. They were carefully placed, symbolizing protection in the afterlife, respect for valor, and continuity between the world of the living and the world beyond. To imagine the helmet in use is to envision a scene of tempestuous activity, ships slicing through icy fjords, the rhythmic beat of oars, the wind carrying the scent of salt and pine. Warriors clad in mail and helms, the Gurmunbu helmet perched upon the head of a seasoned fighter, step onto raiding parties, or face rival clans. The metal catches the flickering light of torches, the glint of the rising sun, and the sparks of fire in siege or conflict. Every movement is purposeful, every strike calculated. The helmet, seemingly silent, sings through the battle, the echo of steel, the deflection of blows, the rhythm of defense, and the silent promise of survival. In its present state, the Gurmunbu helmet rests as a fragment of history, yet it communicates across the centuries. Museums and scholars study its shape, construction, and provenance, piecing together narratives of Viking life, warfare, and culture. Through X-ray scans, metallurgical analysis, and comparisons with other Scandinavian finds, experts reconstruct not just the helmet itself, but the lived experience of the people who depended on it. The helmet becomes a storyteller, revealing insights into the technology, artistry, and martial ethos of an age that shaped the contours of Europe and beyond. The Gurmunbu helmet is also a reminder of human ingenuity. Forged in an era without modern machinery, it embodies the craftsmanship, resourcefulness, and resilience of a people who thrived in harsh climates and turbulent times. The helmet's construction required not only skill but knowledge of ironworking, geometry, and material properties. Its very survival is miraculous, a testament to the care and reverence with which it was created, maintained, and eventually laid to rest. Beyond its functional and historical significance, the helmet inspires reflection on the nature of courage and legacy. Each warrior who wore it was acutely aware of mortality, the thin line between victory and death, and the importance of honor in a society that valued valor above all. The helmet was a companion, a protector, and a declaration. It signified that one had faced storms, endured hardship, and survived. Its song is not audible in a conventional sense, but in the rustle of chainmail, the clash of weapons, and the silent testimony of centuries, it sings still. Even now, as we study the Gurmunbu helmet, it conveys an almost visceral sense of connection. One can imagine lifting it, feeling the weight of iron, noting the curvature designed to protect, appreciating the artistry of a people long gone. The helmet embodies both the tangible and intangible aspects of Viking culture: engineering mastery, martial expertise, social hierarchy, spiritual belief, and a profound understanding of the human experience under the shadow of mortality. Stories persist of warriors who might have worn similar helmets, their deeds becoming legend, their courage amplified by the protection and symbolic power of their headgear. Tales of raids along the British Isles, encounters with other tribes, and the defense of homelands are all intertwined with the object's legacy. The helmet becomes an instrument of storytelling itself, allowing us to peer into moments frozen in history, moments of tension, courage, and survival that would otherwise have been lost to time. The Geirmundbu helmet reminds us that artifacts are not merely static remnants, they are vessels of memory, carriers of identity, and bridges across time. Through it, we glimpse the lives, fears, and ambitions of those who lived over 1,000 years ago. It is more than iron and rivets, it is a testament to human ingenuity, valor, and the enduring resonance of history. To hold the story of the helmet that sang battles is to hear the echoes of past conflicts, the whispers of northern winds across fjords, and the heartbeat of an age defined by courage, skill, and the unyielding pursuit of honor. The helmet remains, even in its quiet repose in museums or scholarly texts, a reminder that the past is never truly silent. Its song endures, carried in imagination, research, and reverence, inspiring awe and curiosity. Through the Geirmundbu helmet, we are connected to a civilization that lived, fought, and dreamed in ways both familiar and alien, and we are reminded that the objects they left behind continue to shape our understanding of human history, one clang, one rivet, and one story at a time. The door that remembered steps, known as the Bronze Door of Hildesheim, stands as one of the most remarkable artifacts of medieval craftsmanship, a portal not only into a cathedral, but into the depths of human imagination and devotion. Created in the early 11th century, under the guidance of Bishop Bernward, this door is more than a functional entrance. It is a monumental story told in metal, a testament to faith, artistry, and the human desire to preserve memory. Cast from bronze, it is the largest and most intricate door of its era in Northern Europe, an extraordinary synthesis of technical mastery and spiritual narrative, inviting all who approach it to pause, reflect, and listen to the silent echoes of footsteps past. The Bronze Door of Hildesheim measures over 4 meters in height and 2 meters in width, consisting of 2 massive panels divided into scenes that trace the narrative of the Old and New Testaments. Each panel is filled with reliefs depicting familiar stories, from the creation of the world to the life of Christ, from the fall of Adam and Eve to the crucifixion. Yet the door is more than a religious text in relief. It is a record of humanity itself, a meditation on sin, redemption, and the passage of time. Every figure carved in bronze seems to hold a moment frozen in eternity, their gestures and expressions offering subtle insights into the medieval mind, into the moral and spiritual concerns that guided lives 1,000 years ago. The process of creating the Hildesheim door was itself a feat of extraordinary ingenuity. The lost wax casting technique was employed, a method requiring incredible precision, patience, and expertise. Artisans would have meticulously sculpted each scene in wax before encasing it in clay to form a mold. Molten bronze, heated to thousands of degrees, was poured into the molds, capturing the smallest details. The folds of robes, the expressions of faces, the tension in outstretched hands. Once cooled and removed, the bronze was polished, patinated, and mounted, transforming raw metal into a narrative masterpiece. The door thus became both a spiritual instrument and a technical marvel, a fusion of devotion and human skill. As one stands before the door, it is impossible not to sense the weight of history embedded in its surface. The bronze door has borne witness to countless footsteps, pilgrims drawn by faith, nobles seeking blessing, clergy performing rituals, and ordinary citizens passing through its arch over centuries. Each footfall, each hand brushing against its cold metal, leaves an imperceptible imprint, a trace of life moving inexorably forward. The door's surface, though solid, seems alive with memory, as if it quietly remembers the hopes, fears, and prayers of all who have crossed its threshold. Beyond its religious significance, the Bronze Door of Hildesheim offers insights into the artistic and cultural currents of the Ottonian era. The figures exhibit a remarkable blend of stylization and naturalism, reflecting both classical influences and the unique aesthetic sensibilities of medieval Germany. The arrangement of scenes demonstrates careful narrative planning, guiding the observer's eye along the arcs of sin, divine intervention, and salvation. The door's iconography was designed to instruct, inspire, and awe, turning the act of entry into a pilgrimage of understanding. A passage not just into the cathedral, but into the stories and moral lessons of the world it represents. The door's creation was intimately linked with Bishop Bernward, a man of vision who sought to elevate Hildesheim Cathedral into a spiritual and cultural center. By commissioning such a monumental piece, Bernward was not merely adorning a building, he was creating a lasting dialogue between generations, a medium through which faith, morality, and human experience could be conveyed. The door was a teaching tool, a visual scripture for those who could not read, a canvas for contemplation, and a declaration of the city's devotion and prestige. What sets the Hildesheim door apart is its remarkable ability to convey emotion and narrative in metal. The reliefs, though fixed in place, seem to breathe. the tension of conflict, the intimacy of familial gestures, the awe of divine encounters, they all radiate across the panels. Observers centuries later can feel the weight of Adam's fall, the sorrow of Abraham's sacrifice, the calm authority of Christ, and the unyielding march of destiny. Bronze, cold and unyielding, here becomes a medium of storytelling that transcends time, a material that carries not only physical impressions but emotional resonance. Throughout the centuries, the bronze door has endured both reverence and threat. Wars, iconoclasm, and the passage of time might have compromised lesser works, yet the Hildesheim door remains remarkably preserved, a silent witness to the rise and fall of empires, the shifting tides of religion, and the unchanging human fascination with stories of morality and redemption. Its presence commands respect, a reminder that art and faith, when intertwined, can withstand the ravages of time. The act of approaching the door, standing before it in the quiet of the cathedral, is itself a journey. One imagines the medieval pilgrim, candle in hand, stepping forward in awe, tracing each figure with their eyes, allowing the reliefs to guide contemplation and reflection. The door's bronze surface, polished by centuries of touch, catches the dim light, revealing textures, shadows, and intricate details that draw the observer deeper into the narrative. Each step toward the door is a step through time, a connection between the present and a millennium of human experience. In its design, the door also reflects an understanding of storytelling that is remarkably modern in its clarity. The division between Old and New Testament scenes, the sequencing of events, and the emphasis on moral and spiritual lessons create a rhythm, a visual cadence that guides the observer's understanding. It is not merely a door but a chronicle in bronze, a series of tableaus that speak to both the intellect and the spirit, demanding engagement, interpretation, and reflection. The door has inspired countless scholars, artists, and visitors who continue to study its panels for hidden meanings, stylistic nuances, and historical insights. Each observation opens new windows into medieval life. The clothing, gestures, weapons, architectural references, and symbolic motifs all provide glimpses into the worldview of the Ottonian period. Every detail, from the curl of a beard to the clasp of a robe, was deliberate, chosen to communicate with clarity and intention, ensuring that the door's message would endure through centuries of changing languages and cultures. Even now, as one imagines the bronze door in situ, it evokes the sounds of a living cathedral, footsteps echoing across stone floors, the murmur of prayers, the hum of voices, the resonance of organ and choir. The door does not merely separate spaces, it frames experiences, shapes perception, and invites contemplation. It is a mediator between the earthly and the divine, the temporal and the eternal, and in doing so, it continues to fulfill the purpose for which it was created, to teach, inspire, and remember. The door that remembered steps stands as a reminder that human ingenuity, devotion, and storytelling are intertwined. Bronze, once molten, transformed by fire and skill, now preserves memory in perpetuity. Each panel, each figure, each contour of metal whispers stories of creation, struggle, faith, and triumph. Its presence challenges us to consider how objects, seemingly inanimate, can carry the weight of human history, emotions, and aspirations. To stand before the Hildesheim door is to feel a connection across 1,000 years, a moment where the past reaches out through metal to touch the present, inviting us to remember, reflect, and continue the journey of understanding. In the end, the bronze door of Hildesheim is more than an artifact. It is a witness, a storyteller, a repository of memory and faith. It remembers the steps of those who came before, preserving them in bronze for generations yet to come. It invites every observer to step closer, to listen, and to allow the stories etched in metal to resonate within their own imagination. Through this door, history is not merely observed, it is experienced, lived, and carried forward. A testament to the enduring power of human creativity, devotion, and the silent songs that objects can tell when we take the time to listen. The figurine that dreamed fire. In the arid highlands of Peru, where the wind carries whispers of civilizations long past, and the earth conceals secrets beneath its dusty surface, lies a small yet extraordinary artifact, the bronze shaman figurine, known among scholars and collectors as the figurine that dreamed fire. At first glance, it appears unassuming, perhaps a few inches in height, cast in bronze with the dark patina of centuries. Yet within its tiny form, it encapsulates an entire world of ritual, belief, and artistry, a bridge between the mortal and the divine, the seen and the unseen. This figurine is not merely a relic of metal, it is a testament to the spiritual imagination of the ancient Andean peoples, a piece that embodies mystery, power, and a connection to forces that transcend ordinary perception. The figurine depicts a shaman in a seated or crouched position, hands raised as if invoking spirits or channeling energies from the earth itself. Its features, though stylized, are remarkably expressive, eyes wide, mouth open as if chanting or breathing life into unseen realms. The shaman's headdress, sometimes adorned with horn-like projections or abstract patterns, suggests not only status but a connection to animals, the natural world, and the elemental forces that the shaman was believed to command. Bronze, a rare and precious material in ancient Peru, was chosen for its durability and its perceived ability to capture spiritual energy, allowing the figurine to act as a vessel for power as much as a work of art. To hold the figurine in one's hands is to feel a subtle weight, not merely of metal, but of centuries of devotion and ceremony. Archaeologists believe that such figurines were used in ritual contexts, perhaps as offerings, talismans, or conduits for communication with the supernatural. The shaman represented here is not just a figure, it is a symbol of transformation, of the human capacity to touch realms beyond the physical, to dream, and to ignite forces that might otherwise remain dormant. The fire it dreams is both literal and metaphorical, a spark of creativity, spirituality, and power preserved in bronze. The creation of the figurine reflects the mastery of metallurgy in ancient Peru. Bronze casting required skill, precision, and knowledge passed down through generations. Artisans would have melted copper with small amounts of tin to create bronze, pouring it into molds carefully prepared to capture intricate details. The figurine's proportions, the subtle musculature, and the intricate designs of the headdress reveal a meticulous understanding of anatomy, symbolism, and narrative. Even the smallest details, the curve of a finger, the texture of robes, the stance of the figure, were deliberate choices designed to communicate spiritual significance and to serve as a focus for ritual. Scholars have long debated the meaning of the figurine that dreamed fire. Some interpret it as a representation of a specific historical shaman, a revered individual whose deeds or visions were immortalized in bronze. Others see it as a more abstract symbol of the shamanic journey itself, a universal embodiment of the ability to traverse worlds, to mediate between the living and the spirits, between chaos and order. Regardless of interpretation, the figurine stands as a window into the belief systems of its creators, offering insight into how ancient Andean cultures understood life, death, and the forces that govern existence. The figurine's posture, often crouched or kneeling, is significant. In many Andean traditions, the shaman's power is activated through physical movement, dance, or ritual gestures. By capturing this position in bronze, the artisans preserved not just the likeness of a shaman, but the very essence of ritual practice. One can imagine the ceremonies in which similar figures were used, smoke rising from burning herbs, drums echoing across the valley, invocations whispered to the mountains, rivers, and stars. The figurine becomes a silent witness to these practices, holding within its metal body the resonance of spiritual energy and the rhythm of sacred acts. Beyond its ritual function, the figurine that dreamed fire provides remarkable insight into ancient Andean aesthetics and values. The emphasis on symmetry, proportion, and symbolic motifs suggests a culture deeply attuned to harmony and meaning. Every curve, every angle, every surface is purposeful, creating a visual language that communicates beyond words. Bronze, chosen for its permanence, allows this language to survive across centuries, connecting modern observers with a distant world of imagination and devotion. The figurine also invites reflection on the human fascination with fire, its destructive and creative powers, its ability to transform, to purify, to illuminate. Fire in shamanic cosmology is both a literal element and a symbol of spiritual illumination, a force that burns away the mundane to reveal the extraordinary. The bronze shaman, with its lifted hands and open gaze, embodies this duality. It dreams fire not only in the sense of ritual invocation but as a metaphor for insight, transformation, and the enduring human quest to understand and shape reality. Archaeological context adds further layers of significance. Many of these figurines were discovered in burial sites, temples, or ceremonial caches, often accompanied by offerings, pottery, and other ritual objects. Their placement suggests intentionality, a belief that the figurine could carry power, protect spaces, or communicate with the divine even in the absence of a living practitioner. Each discovery enriches our understanding of the culture, revealing complex systems of belief, social organization, and spiritual practice. The figurine's enduring appeal lies in its mysterious aura. Despite centuries of study, many questions remain. Who exactly was the shaman it represents? What specific rituals were performed with such figures? What messages did it convey to its original audience? And what truths might it still hold for us today? Its small size belies its vast significance, for it serves as a microcosm of Andean spirituality, creativity, and the timeless human desire to reach beyond the ordinary. To gaze upon the bronze shaman figurine is to be transported across time and space, to witness the intersection of art, faith, and imagination. It is to understand that even the smallest objects can carry the weight of history, the echoes of ceremonies long silenced, and the enduring spark of human aspiration. Its bronze surface, dulled by time, yet still resonant, reflects the flicker of candlelight, the sun's harsh glow, and the shadows of centuries, inviting contemplation and awe. In the figurine's tiny frame resides a universe of meaning. Its posture, expression, and adornments speak of transformation, ritual, and connection, of the capacity of human beings to dream, to ignite fire within themselves, and to commune with forces beyond understanding. The bronze shaman serves as a reminder that even in silence, artifacts can teach, inspire, and ignite the imagination, whispering the stories of those who came before, while inviting new generations to wonder, reflect, and dream. The figurine that dreamed fire is not merely a relic of the past. It is a living symbol of human creativity and spirituality, a vessel for memory, belief, and the eternal dance between earth, sky, and spirit. Its fire, though invisible, burns in the mind and heart of all who encounter it, a reminder that through art, ritual, and imagination, humanity can touch the divine, preserve wisdom, and continue to dream across the centuries. To hold it, to study it, or even to simply gaze upon it, is to partake in that ancient dream, to feel the pulse of a civilization that understood the transformative power of fire, and to be reminded that even in bronze the human spirit can burn brightly, endlessly, and with profound purpose. The tapestry that whispered wars. In the quiet town of Bayeux, nestled within the rolling landscapes of Normandy, there exists an artifact that has witnessed centuries, yet continues to speak with remarkable clarity, if only one knows how to listen. The Bayeux tapestry, often mistaken for a mere decorative cloth, is in truth a vivid chronicle of conquest, ambition, and human endeavor, a tapestry that whispers wars, strategies, triumphs, and tragedies with every thread, every stitch. Stretching nearly 70 meters in length, it is more than embroidery. It is an epic narrative woven into wool, a visual manuscript that offers insight into one of the most pivotal conflicts of medieval Europe, the Norman conquest of England in 1066. To approach the tapestry is to step into a space where time folds in on itself, where the past is stitched into the present, and where the viewer becomes both witness and participant. Each panel, carefully embroidered with dyed wools in shades of terracotta, blue, green, and gold, tells a fragment of a story. From the early depictions of Edward the Confessor, the pious and enigmatic King of England, to Harold Godwinson's fateful journey and eventual confrontation at the Battle of Hastings, the tapestry provides a narrative as compelling as any written chronicle, but in a language of imagery, movement, and symbolism that words alone could scarcely convey. The tapestry's brilliance lies not just in its scale, but in its intricate detail. Figures are rendered with remarkable clarity, knights poised on horseback, banners fluttering in the wind, ships slicing through waves, and towns and castles captured with a precision that conveys both geography and the social hierarchy of the time. Animals, too, play a critical role. Lions, birds, dogs, and mythical creatures populate the borders, often serving symbolic or allegorical functions, reminding the viewer of the omnipresent influence of divine order and fortune in the affairs of men. The borders themselves are alive, teeming with allegorical figures, scenes of everyday life, and fantastical motifs, all of which invite contemplation about the interplay between the ordinary and the extraordinary in medieval consciousness. The process of creating the Bayeux tapestry remains shrouded in mystery, adding to its allure. Scholars believe it was commissioned in the 1070s, likely by Bishop Odo, William the Conqueror's half-brother, yet the identities of the artisans who meticulously embroidered each scene remain unknown. Working from designs, possibly outlined on linen, these medieval craftsmen transformed raw wool into narrative brilliance. Each stitch was deliberate, conveying not merely form but movement, expression, and intention. The tapestry was, in essence, a medieval motion picture, a story in continuous progression, meant to be read from left to right, guiding the viewer through the unfolding events as though traveling alongside the figures themselves. What sets the tapestry apart from other chronicles is its immediacy. Unlike written records, which filter history through language and interpretation, the Bayeux tapestry presents events in a vivid visual idiom, drawing viewers into the rhythm of medieval life, warfare, and politics. One can almost hear the clash of swords, the neighing of horses, and the shouts of men marching toward destiny. The narrative is not static, it moves with energy and purpose, inviting contemplation of leadership, loyalty, courage, and betrayal. Harold's oath to William, the preparation of fleets, and the final confrontation at Hastings are rendered not as abstract occurrences, but as lived experiences, immediate and palpable. Equally fascinating is the tapestry's blend of fact and interpretation. While it is generally accepted as a depiction of historical events, it is impossible to separate its artistry from the political and propagandistic intentions behind its creation. The tapestry casts William the Conqueror in a favorable light, emphasizing the legitimacy of his claim to the English throne and the inevitability of his victory. Harold, by contrast, is portrayed with subtle nuance, a figure caught in circumstance, whose moments of hesitation and action are rendered with human complexity. This duality reflects the tapestry's role not only as historical record but as persuasive narrative, a testament to the power of visual storytelling in shaping perceptions and memory. The tapestry also serves as a portal into the material and social world of the 11th century. Details of clothing, armor, ships, and weaponry are rendered with remarkable fidelity, offering historians a wealth of information about technology, craftsmanship, and societal norms. Noblemen are adorned in tunics and cloaks that denote status, soldiers bear shields and swords consistent with archaeological finds, and the ships, known as longships or galleys, reveal insights into maritime engineering and naval tactics. Every element, from the spurs on a knight's boot to the folds of a queen's robe, is a deliberate choice, each thread contributing to a layered, multi-dimensional narrative that transcends the passage of time. Perhaps most haunting, however, are the tapestry's depictions of death and violence. The Battle of Hastings, captured with meticulous care, shows men falling, horses trampling the wounded, and the chaos of combat distilled into symbolic yet visceral forms. These scenes are neither gratuitous nor sensationalized. They are sober reminders of mortality, consequence, and the human cost of ambition. The tapestry whispers of lives lost, promises broken, and the fragile nature of power. A meditation on history as both spectacle and tragedy. The preservation of the Bayeux Tapestry is itself a remarkable story. Surviving nearly a millennium, it has endured war, neglect, and environmental challenges, yet the colors, forms, and narrative remain vibrant. Each viewing, whether in the museum in Bayeux or through high-resolution digital reconstructions, allows new generations to experience the tapestry's resonance, to trace the threads of history with their eyes and imagination. It is as if the tapestry breathes across centuries, a living document, reminding us that the past is never truly silent, but constantly conversing with the present. In examining the Bayeux Tapestry, one cannot help but reflect on the universality of storytelling, the human impulse to record, interpret, and transmit experience. The tapestry embodies this impulse in its most intricate form, a work that combines artistry, narrative, symbolism, and historical record into a seamless whole. Its power lies not only in what it depicts, but in how it allows viewers to inhabit the world it portrays, to witness the tension of decisions, the sweep of history, and the intimate moments that define human experience. As the tapestry unfolds panel by panel, one begins to perceive its deeper rhythm, a cadence of ambition, loyalty, fear, and courage. The figures march, ride, and engage, creating a visual symphony that echoes the realities of medieval politics and warfare. The tapestry whispers not just of conquest, but of identity, of a people defining themselves in relation to neighbors, kings, and destiny. It is a meditation on the inevitability of change, the fragility of human plans, and the enduring power of art to capture the sweep of events that might otherwise be forgotten. The tapestry that whispered wars reminds us that history is never inert. Each thread carries intention, memory, and interpretation. Each stitch binds the viewer to those who came before, creating a continuity of experience that transcends centuries. To gaze upon it is to listen to whispers of battles, councils, journeys, and dreams. It is to recognize that even in thread and wool, the human spirit seeks to endure, to narrate, and to remind us that every act, every decision, resonates far beyond the moment. And so, as we trace the tapestry's panels, following the march of Norman and Saxon alike, we are drawn into a conversation that spans nearly 1,000 years. The tapestry whispers, not with sound, but with vision, inviting contemplation, reflection, and awe. It teaches us that history is not only written in chronicles, but embroidered in the imagination, stitched into the very fabric of time, allowing us to witness the epic story of conquest, survival, and human ambition as it unfolds, eternally present in threads of wool, color, and craftsmanship. As the story of the Bayeux Tapestry continues to unfold, the focus shifts from the broader sweep of armies and rulers to the individual lives entwined within its embroidered narrative. Every figure, no matter how small or seemingly peripheral, represents a story, a choice, or a moment suspended in time. Soldiers march in ordered columns, their armor reflecting the sun, their shields bearing intricate designs, yet within this disciplined formation are hints of fear, uncertainty, and humanity. A knight steadies his horse, a foot soldier glances toward the horizon, and a messenger hastens between camps. These are not simply symbols of war, they are the human expressions of anticipation, loyalty, and dread, captured in thread and color for eternity. One of the most fascinating aspects of the tapestry is its treatment of movement. Though woven into static material, the embroidery conveys motion with extraordinary clarity. Horses appear to gallop, sails billow in the wind, and flags ripple as if caught in a living breeze. This dynamic quality transforms the tapestry from a mere visual record into a kinetic experience, allowing viewers to follow not just events, but the rhythm and energy of medieval life. In this sense, the Bayeux Tapestry is more than a historical document, it is a carefully choreographed representation of action, strategy, and consequence. Throughout the tapestry, attention to detail offers a window into the everyday world of the 11th century. Domestic scenes in the margins reveal plows breaking soil, peasants tending livestock, and artisans at work, subtly reminding viewers that life continued beyond the battlefield. These glimpses of ordinary existence juxtapose the extraordinary events of conquest, grounding the tapestry in lived reality. Even the smallest creatures, the dogs chasing, birds flying, and mythical hybrids, serve to enrich the narrative, suggesting that history is a tapestry of both grand and mundane moments, each worthy of attention. The tapestry also functions as a medium of memory and political statement. By elevating William the Conqueror's legitimacy and emphasizing the divine sanction of his rule, the embroidery serves as propaganda as much as history, yet it does so with subtlety, blending accuracy with interpretive framing. Harold's journey, for example, is depicted with careful nuance, portraying him as both capable and constrained by circumstance. The tapestry's narrative choices reflect an understanding of perception, reminding viewers that history is shaped not only by events, but by how they are recorded, framed, and remembered. One of the tapestry's most compelling scenes depicts the preparation for the Battle of Hastings. Fleets of ships are loaded with soldiers, supplies, and horses, illustrating not only the logistics of medieval warfare, but the scale of ambition required for conquest. The embroidery captures the tension and anticipation of departure, the anxiety of soldiers leaving their homes, and the complex coordination needed for such an endeavor. Observing these panels, one can almost feel the salty spray of the channel, hear the creaking timbers, and sense the palpable anticipation that accompanies any momentous journey. The battle itself is a masterclass in narrative economy. Figures overlap and interlock, weapons clash, and the chaos of combat is conveyed without confusion. Individual moments stand out: a fallen knight, a horse trampling the wounded, a soldier raising a banner in defiance. Yet within this tumult, patterns emerge: lines of attack, strategies employed, and moments of decisive action. The tapestry, while visual, teaches lessons in leadership, courage, and consequence, revealing that the outcomes of history are often determined by decisions made in fleeting instants, where valor, fortune, and timing converge. Equally striking is the tapestry's humanism. Despite its focus on kings, armies, and political machinations, it never loses sight of the human element. Faces are expressive, gestures convey emotion, and actions reveal character. Women, children, and clergy appear in various panels, reminding viewers that the consequences of war ripple far beyond the battlefield. Their inclusion is a testament to the tapestry's comprehensive vision of society, capturing the interconnectedness of all lives affected by historical events. Beyond its narrative richness, the Bayeux Tapestry stands as an enduring achievement of medieval artistry. The stitching techniques, primarily stem stitch for outlines and couching for filling areas, allowed the artisans to achieve remarkable subtlety and precision. The choice of color, limited yet vibrant, conveys depth, contrast, and emphasis. This craftsmanship ensures that even after centuries, the tapestry communicates with clarity, inviting close inspection of both large-scale events and minute details. It is a work where the technical and artistic merge seamlessly with the narrative, producing an object of extraordinary complexity and beauty. The tapestry also invites reflection on memory, legacy, and the act of witnessing. By capturing this crucial moment in history with such care, the anonymous artisans ensured that the events, personalities, and consequences of the Norman conquest would persist across generations. Each stitch functions as a mnemonic device, preserving not only events but the interpretations, biases, and aesthetics of its creators. In this sense, the tapestry is both historical record and cultural artifact, a bridge across time that allows modern viewers to engage directly with the medieval mind. As the narrative approaches its conclusion, the tapestry emphasizes resolution and continuity. Harold lies fallen, William's victory secured, and the transition of power is both depicted and symbolized. Yet the tapestry does not suggest that history ends. It merely records one chapter in an ongoing story of human ambition, conflict, and adaptation. Life continues beyond the panels, echoing the medieval understanding that history is cyclical, shaped by both fate and human action, and that each era leaves its imprint upon the next. Perhaps most poignantly, the Bayeux Tapestry demonstrates the power of storytelling to transcend time and medium. Though centuries have passed since its creation, its lessons, insights, and imagery remain accessible. Viewers today can feel the tension of battle, the weight of leadership, and the texture of medieval life with remarkable immediacy. The tapestry whispers across a millennium, reminding us that even as centuries accumulate, the essence of human experience, ambition, fear, loyalty, and courage remains recognizable, understood, and deeply affecting. In contemplating the Bayeux Tapestry, one is drawn not only to its visual splendor, but to its enduring capacity to communicate. It is a work that demands attention, invites reflection, and rewards curiosity. Each viewing reveals new details, new relationships, and new insights into the complexities of medieval life. Its ability to whisper, to convey the weight of history and the immediacy of human experience ensures that it continues to captivate, educate, and inspire. Finally, the tapestry serves as a reminder of the fragility and resilience of human memory. In preserving the story of conquest and consequence, it transcends the limitations of oral and written records, demonstrating that visual narrative can endure, educate, and enthrall. The tapestry that whispered wars is more than art, it is history in motion, a vivid chronicle of human endeavor, and a testament to the power of creativity, insight, and storytelling across time. It remains, as it has for nearly 1,000 years, an enduring voice from the past, inviting viewers to listen closely, to reflect, and to carry its lessons into the present and future. The lamp that shone through centuries, long before the modern glow of electricity, before lanterns lined streets and cities hummed with perpetual light, there was the soft flicker of flame. Fire was humanity's first and most powerful companion, and when it was contained in clay, bronze, or stone, it became not just survival but symbol. Among the remnants of one of the world's most enigmatic and powerful civilizations, the Carthaginians, there survives such a vessel, a small, deceptively ordinary object, yet one that carried light through temples, houses, and tombs, the oil lamp of Carthage, a relic that whispered both domestic warmth and divine mystery. Carthage, founded by the Phoenicians around the 9th century BCE on the shores of modern Tunisia, was a city that thrived between worlds. Positioned on the Mediterranean, it was both a hub of commerce and a fortress of war, known to the Romans as both rival and terror. The Carthaginians built ships that cut across seas, traded goods that traveled thousands of miles, and forged a culture steeped in religion, ritual, and secrecy. Within their homes and sanctuaries, the oil lamp was a constant companion, a vessel of both the practical and the sacred. The Carthaginian lamp was not just a tool of light, it was a witness. Its clay body, often molded with inscriptions or designs, told stories of the people who made it, the rituals it illuminated, and the nights it guarded. The one that survives, known as the oil lamp of Carthage, speaks across centuries with the voice of fire. It is small enough to rest in the palm of one's hand, yet it carried with it the gravity of an entire civilization's rise, conflicts, and fall. To understand its significance, one must picture Carthage itself at its height. Tall walls stretching against the horizon, a bustling harbor filled with merchant ships, and streets alive with traders, priests, soldiers, and artisans. The scent of spices drifted from markets, the clamor of iron echoed from forges. And in the homes that lined those avenues, in temples that loomed above, and in the sacred precincts like the Tophet, where children were offered to gods in sacrifices still debated and shrouded in shadow, lamps like this one cast their steady glow. The oil lamp of Carthage, like its countless kin, relied on olive oil to burn. Olive trees, spread throughout the Mediterranean, offered the lifeblood of these lamps. A wick, often made of flax or linen, would be soaked and set into the narrow nozzle of the lamp, where flame could be drawn and sustained. But beyond its mechanics, the light symbolized a link between humans and gods, between the temporary span of life and the eternity of divine order. Fire was never mere utility to ancient peoples. It was a living presence, requiring respect, carrying meaning. It is easy to imagine a Carthaginian family gathered around the warm glow of such a lamp, its light pooling on clay walls, casting long shadows across woven mats and wooden furniture. Meals were shared, conversations carried, lullabies sung as the lamp burned softly. The flame became part of memory, part of daily rhythm. But in temples, the oil lamp carried an altogether more solemn purpose. It lit statues of gods, burned beside offerings, and was placed in sanctuaries where priests whispered prayers in languages half lost to us today. The lamp became the silent witness to vows, supplications, and rituals intended to bridge human need with divine favor. The very shape of Carthaginian lamps reveals this duality. Some were plain, undecorated, their function purely domestic. Others were engraved with images, crescent moons, stars, sacred animals, symbols of gods like Tanit and Baal Hammon, who presided over fertility, harvest, and fate. The flames that flickered from these lamps were not just light, but invocation, a symbolic offering that fed not only eyes but spirits. To extinguish a sacred lamp prematurely was thought to court misfortune, even anger the gods. When Carthage entered conflict with Rome, and when its people feared invasion and siege, lamps like these became companions in war. Soldiers carried them in their tents. Commanders kept them in strategy halls, their dim glow illuminating maps and plans of campaigns. It is not hard to imagine Hannibal himself planning the march across the Alps by the faint flame of an oil lamp, shadows dancing on his face as he pondered the impossible path that history would never forget. The oil lamp of Carthage that survives may once have burned in a temple, or perhaps in a burial chamber. Many such lamps were buried with the dead, placed as guides for the departed souls into the afterlife. Light was the bridge between worlds, the living and the dead, the mortal and the divine. When a Carthaginian body was lowered into a tomb, a lamp was placed at their side, its oil filled, its wick ready, as if promising, "You will not walk in darkness on the path beyond." This symbolism transcended Carthage itself. When Rome finally destroyed Carthage in 1406 BCE, razing the city and scattering its people, the lamps continued to glow in the ruins. For centuries after, travelers would pass through the wreckage and find shards of clay lamps, remnants of a civilization that once rivaled Rome itself. Even in destruction, these lamps carried their light forward, pieces of a story that would not extinguish. The oil lamp of Carthage that is preserved today shows traces of soot near its nozzle, the faint evidence of flames that once danced centuries ago. Archaeologists who uncovered it recognized that they were not merely holding clay, but the vessel of countless evenings, prayers, and rituals. That soot is the fingerprint of history, the lingering breath of a flame that burned while Carthage was alive, when its streets thrived, when its people spoke in their Phoenician tongue, when their gods listened in the night. Its endurance across centuries gives it a kind of immortality. In the quiet rooms of a museum where it now rests, it still feels as if the lamp remembers. It remembers the hands that filled it with oil, the lips that whispered near its glow, the shadows it cast upon walls now fallen. The oil lamp of Carthage reminds us that history is not just in books or monuments, but in small, intimate objects that touched everyday lives. It is an object of paradox, small yet vast, ordinary yet sacred, fragile yet enduring. In its clay rests the memory of a civilization once feared by Rome, once master of the seas, once bearer of gods and warriors. And even today, when it no longer burns with flame, it shines in another way, through imagination, memory, and the story it carries across time. The lamp may seem silent now, but if you look long enough, if you let your thoughts wander to the city it came from, you can almost see its light return, a soft, trembling flame, carrying warmth, memory, and whispers from a world that still lives in its glow. The lamp flickered again, its tiny flame casting shadows that seemed almost deliberate, as though they wished to tell their own story. It was not merely a vessel of clay and oil, not just an artifact buried beneath centuries of shifting sands. It was a witness of empires rising and falling, of men who dreamed of eternal power, and of women who whispered prayers to unseen gods as they lit its modest wick. In the silence of Carthage, where wind brushed softly over broken stones, the lamp was once carried into exile. There are fragments of stories, whispered by historians, and echoed by the earth itself, that say the lamp did not perish with the burning city. Someone, perhaps a refugee fleeing the Roman firestorms, took it with them across the sea. Imagine the trembling hand of a mother, clutching the lamp to her chest as she gathered her children, rushing to a waiting vessel. The night sky reflected on black waves, and the flame was shielded beneath her cloak, a stubborn ember refusing to die. From Carthage, the lamp is said to have traveled across the Mediterranean. Some claim it reached Sicily, others suggest it passed into the shadow of Alexandria, where the lighthouse still stood in those years like a column of fire itself. The truth may never be known, but the lamp was not meant to vanish. That much is certain. In Alexandria, where philosophers argued beneath colonnades and the scrolls of the library were still intact, the lamp may have found a new purpose. Oil lamps were not rare, they burned in every temple, home, and street. But this lamp, plain to the casual eye, carried a weight. Its clay bore the handprint of an artisan who lived and died in Carthage, whose thumb left a slight indentation when the vessel was still damp. That print endured centuries, invisible yet permanent. Scholars in Alexandria may have traced its curve, pondering its origin. Did they know it was from Carthage? Did they whisper of the city that Rome tried to erase? Perhaps. And yet history is not a straight path. Wars came again, empires fractured, and the lamp drifted from hands to hands. A Greek sailor once claimed to have carried a lamp from Africa that never went out, not even on stormy nights when waves broke against the deck. His words, preserved in fragments of letters, suggest that the lamp had already become legend. Imagine him lighting it on his ship, watching as the flame defied the salt winds, casting its glow on ropes and sails soaked with brine. His companions may have sworn it was touched by the gods. The lamp then disappears for centuries, slipping into silence like so many relics do. Was it buried in the collapse of a house during an earthquake? Was it hidden in a grave, tucked beside the bones of someone who believed its light would guide them to another world? Or did it remain in use, ordinary yet extraordinary, glowing through generations unnoticed? By the medieval period, Carthage was long gone, its ruins scavenged for stone, its stories twisted by conquerors. But travelers speak of a lamp found in a monastery along the North African coast. The monks tended it, believing it to be holy. They said the oil never spoiled, that it burned steady, even when left unattended. Pilgrims came to see it, kneeling before the small vessel, as though it were an icon. The monks themselves may not have known its true origin, only that it had arrived long before their time, passed to them as a gift or relic. Centuries rolled forward, and once again, war came. Raiders swept across the coasts, fires burned in monasteries, and relics scattered into the hands of looters. Some believe this is when the lamp left Africa, carried northward by traders or soldiers. By the time it reappears, it is whispered about in the courts of Europe, a lamp, small and clay-bound, said to have once belonged to Carthage. A lamp whose flame could not be extinguished. Kings sought it, not for faith but for power. For in their minds, if a lamp could endure centuries, so too might their reigns. Yet the lamp had its own will, or so the stories say. It resisted ownership, it slipped away in times of chaos, always surviving but never binding itself to one empire for long. And so it passed. Hidden in reliquaries, tucked into cabinets of curiosity, buried in private collections. Its flame lit the faces of alchemists as they scribbled formulas deep into the night. It illuminated scholars in dim chambers, its steady glow watching as they unrolled manuscripts older than their tongues, and still it endures. Some say it was rediscovered in the 19th century, pulled from the sands near ancient Carthage itself, as though it had grown weary of wandering and returned home. Archaeologists noted its simple form, unadorned clay, a narrow spout, the faint mark of a hand pressed into its side. But when they lit it, the flame seemed stronger than expected, casting shadows that lingered. Even now, in museum halls, it rests quietly. Visitors pass by, unaware that it once shone through the fall of empires, the collapse of cities, and the journeys of the displaced. It is more than a lamp. It is memory, shaped into clay and fire. Every flicker carries whispers of Carthage, the cries of children, the clash of steel, the prayers of mothers, the arguments of philosophers, the chants of monks. And though it burns with no voice of its own, its silence is a language older than any inscription. If you stand before it long enough, if you let the hum of the museum fade, you may feel it still. The warmth of a light that never yielded, the story of a people who refused to vanish. The lamp remains, patient and watchful, carrying centuries within its modest flame. And so, as darkness gathers in our own age, the lamp endures, whispering softly in the only way it knows how, through light, fragile yet eternal, shining across the centuries as though time itself were but another shadow to outlast. Another mystery fades back into the shadows, but many more remain waiting to be uncovered. Thank you for watching Unearthed Secrets. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share where you're watching from. Until next time, keep your eyes open. The past is never truly silent.